Brad Moran tells you how to make $205 million in 4 years. It's that easy. Okay, here we are. Ducks Don't Get Cold Feet, episode 33, and we are here with a man that's definitely changed my life, that's for sure. Brad Moran, who's the CEO of CitrusAd. Brad, welcome to Adelaide.
Thanks, mate. It's good to be back home, where I spent 10 years of my life.
I know. I mean, you're an Adelaide boy.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm an English boy originally. Moved to Australia when I was 15. Spent 3 years on the Gold Coast, then Melbourne. Then Adelaide. Got stuck here for 10 years. Played some footy, started a business, and then got kicked out of town, decided to flee.
Okay.
To Brisbane.
Welcome to Adelaide.
Welcome back.
Hey, welcome back. I mean, you have done a lot over the last few years that I've definitely seen. And in fact, I think we've known each other for about 6 years or so when you started, you were peddling NoQueue at the time. And then you went off and started Citrus. I mean, you've given a very quick introduction on what you do, but we'll get into that later.
Hang on, so you said peddling.
Yeah, peddling.
Peddling.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's the connotation you want to be using. Peddling citrus sounds pretty bad. It's like peddling drugs.
I reckon I was peddling NoQueue, but hey, let's get straight into it. I mean, you were actually born in West Midlands in England.
Yeah, Shakespeare's town.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why I can read and write.
What sort of upbringing did you have? Like, were your parents there? Were they not? Were they a big part of your life, or they sent you to boarding school?
Gee, we're getting straight into the childhood trauma. Is this a psychology session?
Yeah. I've been told it's a bit of a therapy session.
Yeah, well, found a therapy is something that's much needed for me at the moment. I was one of 3 siblings, but both were much older than me, so sort of only child syndrome a bit. Both parents worked long hours.
What were the parents doing?
My dad was in cars, so he was a really smart bloke, but ended up running his own business in a car dealership, became the most successful Ford dealership in Europe, but very much sort of worked for someone else, didn't want to sort of branch out and kind of go out by himself. And then when he came to Australia, he did. He went out in real estate, did really well for himself. But super clever guy, super sharp, incredible IQ. But my mum, on the other hand, was probably the more entrepreneurial of the two. So I think I got a little bit of a mix of both.
Okay.
I think, but yeah, my childhood was pretty stock standard.
What school did you go to over there?
I went to, I say stock standard. I went to 8 different schools.
Journey boy. What was the why were you traveling so much?
Well, I think, Dad's business, well, we would come in and out of wealth. And so we would kind of go public and private. And then I kind of wanted to go back into public school because that's where my brother and sister went for senior school. So they wanted to get me back into there. And we'd move around a lot too. So as my parents kind of grew their wealth, they moved from suburb to suburb to sort of wealthier places and moved out of the sort of Bronx and Birmingham to the nicer places.
Oxford?
Not quite Oxford. Although my dad he has a very interesting tale to tell of real estate, and he could have bought a house in London at the time in about 1985, just before I was born, for about £500,000. Just a lot of money back then, but he could have stretched his mortgage to get there. It's worth about £30 million these days because it is right in the middle of Mayfair.
Wow.
So sliding doors. He never lets my mum forget that.
We've all played Monopoly.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone knows where Mayfair is. But no, look, I had 2 lives. When I came to Australia, I was head down in my sport because I didn't have a social life. Like moving to Australia as an English person in the Gold Coast, which is probably the most prejudiced place on earth for anyone from anywhere. It's not just about being racist towards Poms.
It's racist towards everyone.
No, racist. I felt bad. I was like, you know what? This is victimization. And then I realized that it was anybody that wasn't from the Gold Coast. It's like,
which is most people.
Yeah. It's like anyone that's South African, Zimbabwe, like New Zealand, Victoria, South Australia. They're all lepers, if they weren't from the coast. So most of my mates are all from interstate. But in England, I was a bit of a hoodlum, I got mixed up in all the wrong crowds and sort of just spent my life kind of terrorising town.
I'm guessing you played soccer in England.
Yep.
Tall. Well,
athletic,
I've watched a few of your videos, mate. I wouldn't say fast.
Yeah. Did hold the draft camp record for sprint, but that's
okay. And you're pretty quick on the 3K, maybe?
second last, but I still ran a pretty quick one for the Adelaide Crows, 10:28, but I came second last, which is a split of about 3:27. So to the average person, that's pretty quick, but for Craigie, it was not quick enough. So I got ridden all pre-season for not being fit enough, and I thought I was pretty fit, but apparently not.
A bit of a culture shock. So you obviously soccer dream stopped when you came to Australia when you're 15.
No, my soccer dream stopped at the age of 10.
Okay.
When my dad said, you're not going to make it. So, yeah, you know pretty early on you're not going to make it in England. You've either been picked up by a club, and he said, look, you can, because my dad played a few games for Aston Villa, so he had been there and not done that, bought the T-shirt. He got riddled with injury, and his career was very, very different, interesting. He stopped by the time he was 17, but if you don't get picked up by a club by the age of 10 or in their books, then you don't really stand a chance. And he goes, look, you can probably make it as a goalkeeper because you're very athletic and tall, but I hated playing in goal. Didn't want to do a sport I hated, so, which is funny because I ended up playing footy, which I didn't like. So,
so you do come over, you start playing footy. I think you have 21 games. They weren't all with the Crows because you're with North Melbourne.
Yeah, 3 with North.
Yeah.
So started my career with a bang. Came out of the blocks my first game, NAB Rising Star. 21 touches and 28 minutes of footy, and was on cloud 9 after that. I thought I was, feeling pretty good because all year midway through the year, I was told by one of the senior managers of the club that I was going to get cut and just start preparing for the life after football. And so when I actually mentally said, okay, well, I've got nothing to play for anymore, I actually started to play better and played enough good games to get picked reluctantly because the coach at the time did not want to play me at all. And just through sheer luck, got my first game, and then everyone was kind of like, oh, fuck, this bloke, he's actually not too bad. And then the next week, I'm still pretty convinced that the coach tried to sabotage me and put me with a run-with role with Nathan Buckley. Yeah. So he said I'd go tag Bucks for a day. He thought, oh, it's a good lesson for you to see how an elite midfielder runs. I kind of feel like he'd maybe set me up just to get flogged, but I'd stayed with him and he didn't get that many touches that day. And I remember he sort of winked at me at the end of the game and said, well done. And that was pretty cool. And then the next year I just couldn't get a game. They had 11 blokes over 200 centimetres and they were playing well, didn't need to play me. And I just got frustrated, moved to the Crows. And then I got given an opportunity at the Crows. But again, then it was a different industry. I was just riddled with injury at the Crows.
So Crows was a long time with plenty of injuries. What sort of injuries?
Yeah, well, I had a good pre-season first year. Had a good pre-season cup, and then decided to go back to Westies and play half a game just to get my game time up before round 1. And I just remember I was about half time and I'd taken sort of 10 marks at that point. So I was feeling pretty good about myself. I thought I just got another quarter. And then one of my teammates, James Seller, started giving me shit about getting cheap touches of the footy. Yeah. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go for the hardest ball possible here. Yeah. And so the ball got kicked straight out of the centre, bounced straight over my head, ran back with the flight, trying to be a hero. Jumped into someone, broke my finger. I was out for 7 weeks, just trying to be a hero. And I thought I won't do that again. Spent 7 weeks on the bike. First training session came out, decided to kick the ball from 50 metres, just as you do at the start of training, rip the hamstring off the bone. There you go. There's another 7 weeks. So my first game was round 16. And it was against Port Adelaide showdown. Got dropped straight after it, even though I thought I'd played okay. First gamers should be given at least a couple of games. Like first game, you're a bag of nerves, right? Yeah. You're never going to perform. And the showdown is probably the hardest game to perform in because the whole state's watching you, and Port Adelaide were better than us at that point. And I played against, Brendan Lade and Dean Brogan. Not exactly the kind of guys you want to turn up against on your first day at work. Yeah. So, got dropped, and then the next week I managed to get a game, but only because someone else went down injured. So they called me up at 4 a.m. on a Saturday and said, you need to fly to Sydney. Flew to Sydney, and because I had no fear, I didn't care at that point, probably played the best game of footy I've played. I remember if I start games badly, typically it goes on the whole game.
Yeah, it's pretty much that's the same for a lot of players.
It is. Yeah, it's a confidence thing, particularly confidence players. They need early touches and early good. And I remember breaking that mold because in the first 2 minutes, I tried to take a mark against Darren Jolly in the goal square. He clearly outmarked me because he's a big unit. Kicked the goal, runner came straight on, gave me a spray, but I didn't care. Next time I took the mark. I don't think I did to spoil all game. I just kept trying to mark the ball. And when people say, what do you enjoy most about your footy career? I always go back to that one game. Like,
wow.
I kick 4 against Carlton the next week, which is obviously like the roar of the crowd of West Lakes when you're kicking 4 goals and you come from behind and beat Carlton was pretty sensational. Like, you can't relive those moments. No amount of money or energy or anything you do can ever give you that feeling again. So there's one thing I do love about that football feeling, but I was still a bag of nerves at that game.
So talk us through your first showdown in particular. Like, obviously being in Adelaide, showdowns are a big deal. Is it extra nervous going in it, or do you actually know the guys from Port? Like, these days it seems like everyone socialises together and
I think
literally giving each other pats on the back and shit like that.
Yeah, pretend bravado now. I think, funnily enough, I was still playing with a crew that we're still part of that quite public brawl at the Ramsgate. So there wasn't much love lost between those two teams.
Yeah.
And the 2 players I played against were just aggressive units anyway. Like, they would just bash you no matter what. So I had a fun day at the park. I didn't read into it too much. Like, there's a lot of guys on the field that give you banter and shit, but they just talk shit to everybody.
Yeah.
Anyone and everyone. And I remember St Kilda were the worst. This guy's just running around, just yapping, and you just feel like, mate, you just got shit for brains. You're just yapping for no reason. Like, you're not affecting me in any way, shape, or form. So, like, basically, zip your mouth. But Port, I don't know. I was probably too new to Adelaide to understand the gravity of the showdown. But I knew it was a big game. I didn't really get to know the Port guys after that. Like, I think I didn't go out much. I didn't go clubbing or anything like that, so I didn't probably meet them out socially. But I do know in Melbourne when I played for North, like, I was pretty close to the Collingwood guys and the Hawthorn guys, and they do get pretty close because you're sort of ripped away from your families, and then at 18, 19, you're sort of trying to find your bearings in a new state. And so you do. At North Melbourne, I was the only 18-year-old apart from Jesse Smith. Everyone else was 21 and older, so we were young. So you would cling to other players from other clubs. But Adelaide, no. I mean, I played in a couple of showdowns, but to me, it was all just about my game. I never really concentrated on the opposition. Didn't really care.
So that's pretty much what you learnt later on in the piece, I guess, until evidently something happened, obviously, to end a career, or?
Yeah, funnily enough, no. Like, even though I'd play well, I would get to the end of every game and just breathe a sigh of relief. Like, it was never, geez, I played well. It was like, thank God I didn't play shit. And you're calculating in the last 5 minutes, have I done enough not to get dropped? That's pretty much every game that I played that I thought about. And when you play like that,
you can't perform.
No, you don't, because you're playing with shackles on, and you're not playing with confidence, and you're not playing with freedom. So, and our team were very conscious about how much you ran, and how much you did off the ball. And so I was very, like, I look back.
Were you tracked back then? Did they have trackers?
Oh, yeah, we had the GPS on all the time. And they'd work your sprints, and guys would cheat and sprint up and down, like, the sidelines when they were doing their warm-ups and stuff, where they'd try and get in, like, but they didn't realise you could see the clock and where they'd sprinted and stuff. But they were far too focused on, we'd get to Monday morning and it'd be like, how many Ks did you cover? How many sprint efforts did you do? How many 1%ers did you do? And I know they all play a factor in winning games, but you became so focused on, like, if I'd had 35 touches and kick 4, if I didn't do 45 sprint efforts, I'd get pulled through the coals. So it was just focusing on the wrong areas, and I just didn't like that. And then what it did is it forced you, when you're out in the footy field, to start thinking about, how many sprint efforts have I done? Like, and then you end up just running around to fucking hit these sprint efforts, and you're like, I'm running away from the ball because I'm trying to tick a box so that I don't get grilled on Monday. And
do you think it's like, how many people playing AFL would actually be thinking that mindset?
Look, I think every club is different. Like North, they did not care about your fitness.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to be fit, obviously, right? You had to be match fit.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example. In the 3K time trial in North Melbourne, I would come in the top 5 as a big guy, right?
Okay.
And at the Crows, I came second last. So, but North...
And that's cruising too. That's like a 10-minute 3K.
Yeah. But at North, I ran slower. I was running like 11:20. So I wasn't even running that fast. Not to say they weren't fit. They were just fit in different ways, right? They were sprint fit, repeat effort fit, which is what you needed to be. But I was also about 8 kilos heavier at North, but that's what you got to be as a ruckman. You got to be heavier to battle with other blokes who are 10 kilos heavier than you.
Yeah.
But no, every club's different. Laidley didn't care about fitness too much. He just cared about, could you find the ball? Could you use the ball well?
Yeah.
So for all his pitfalls as a coach, I actually think he was a pretty smart operator.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't that personable. Like I don't feel like he loved me. He didn't like me that much.
Yeah.
But I feel like as a tactical coach, he was very good. Like he was one of the first coaches to kind of bring in that, kick to the side, inside fat side kick. So come back, bring the ball back into the corridor and then switch the sides, gives you forwards. So he was one of the first guys to really do that.
Yeah.
And, he was kind of hamstrung at North because we didn't have a budget, didn't have very good facilities. And, he made the best out of a bad team, to be honest. And not saying we had a bad team, but we didn't have number 1 draft picks, We'd always kind of finish 8th, 9th, 10th. And so we'd always be in that run-of-the-mill kind of mix.
So with your coaching, you got to see totally different styles of coaching. Does any of that help for when you're making decisions in business?
Oh, 100%. That's the only thing I took away. How not to coach people. As brutal as that sounds.
Yeah.
I feel like the old school coaches... It was funny because I was part of a transition period, I reckon, where coaches now coach probably much better in the way they should coach. So the Paul Roos style, the consultative style, the getting to know your players intimately, deeply, what motivates them. Because everyone's different.
Yeah.
Some players need to be whacked over the wrists and they need to be smacked around and because that gets them going.
Yeah.
But some players, particularly players who are my generation younger than me, are not ready for that old school, beat you up type stuff, right? Because they just didn't grow up in it. And so they need a lot more, they're more confidence type players. And so you got to understand the human psyche a little bit more and start to treat people differently. And so, it's not necessarily their fault, but what you take away from it is you can't treat an engineer the same way you treat a sales guy, the same way you treat an executive, the same way you treat a finance person. And you treat them firstly as human beings. And you got to understand that as a founder, you have very, very different motivations to your staff. And that was a hard lesson I learned very early as well in my business career. But I don't take a huge amount of analogies out of football other than I look at, okay, when did I play my best and why didn't I play my best in certain times? And when you're constantly playing under fear, I know I never did my best work under fear, so I'm assuming no one else does.
Yeah.
And so the first rule as a founder is you've got to act as a shield. When you run out of money, which we did several times, when the business isn't going well, when the shit hits the fan, when you're under huge amounts of pressure, you got to have a poker face. You got to pretend like everything is fine. Because if staff start to get the feeling that you got 10 grand in the bank and you can't make payroll, what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to
look elsewhere.
They're going to get real nervous.
Yeah.
They're going to take their eye off the ball.
Yeah.
They're going to start to lose faith in you. They're going to lose faith in the business, and then everyone gets nervous. So it's definitely one lesson I took away from football is to look at what drives people. So what, not only their position, because everyone's got different personality types, but getting to know people and going, okay, why do you do what you do? It's the why, not the what, right? And that's what I think what a lot of people forget about startups is if you don't have a really strong conviction about why you're doing what you're doing, you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
No matter how good your idea is or how well you execute.
Yeah, because I think, did you honestly go into football thinking this is my career? Like I don't know what sort of money you paid back then. It was probably
not enough to retire on.
Oh, okay, definitely not enough to retire on. I don't think. Well, there's not many.
Well,
but
I got
these
drafted
days,
in my first year. I was earning 39 grand.
Yeah.
Second year was 54. Third year is 65 because that's your standard contract.
Yeah.
And then you get match payments on top of that. And if you were half decent, you'd be on $500,000 maybe. But nowadays, a little bit different. Salary cap's gone up, but I can't imagine the average player gets paid that much more.
Yeah.
I'd say it's...
Yeah, you get your high end that everyone sees.
You do, but...
you can earn hundreds of thousands of dollars playing football.
Yeah, but that irritates me. You know, people get on TV and they go, these players these days are earning so much money. And it's like, yeah, okay, but if you take... They're in the top 0.1% of what they do.
Yep.
Right? And the amount of money they bring into the AFL is massive.
Yep.
So as a percentage of the AFL, I think it's about 25 to 28%. It was 21% when I was playing. So over every dollar the AFL earns, the players get 21. Well, the NBA is 55 and the NFL is 55. So all we would do as a players association is saying, we just want a higher percentage of whatever you earn. So if you have a crap year and you don't earn that much, then that's fine with us. But there was never that equality for players. But in terms of players actually earning that much money, I liken it to, okay, what are the top 0.1% of CEOs earn? Let's look at the CBA CEO, 15 mil a year. But people look at footballers and go, well, they're overpaid. It's like, no, they don't. They got a 5 to 7 year career at best.
Yeah,
and
totally.
They're going to come out with the better part of their educational life gone. They're 18 to 25. They've probably normally been ripped away from their families as well, so they've got no support networks. And then they're left on the scrap heap at 25, 26 with bodily injuries, mental injuries that I had a hip replacement 3 months ago.
Yeah, just recently.
And I'm 35. So, those people that aspire to be AFL footballers probably don't think about the long-term consequences of what it can do to your body and brain. So no, I don't think they get paid anywhere near enough.
Yeah.
So
it's fucking brutal.
Oh, it is. It is brutal.
You watch these guys and you sit there and you just think that's going for 4 quarters.
Yep.
It's brutal at any point in time, and you watch and think it's amazing. And the training and match preparation that needs to go to that is your whole life. And you talk about, you're losing your 18 to 24 when you may be going to uni if that's what you want to do. But you're also playing football, I'm assuming, from the age of 10 flat out, where your parents are taking you all around and your focus is footy and that's what you want, because, whether you want to be a Formula One driver, football player, at some age, you want to, hopefully for kids, it sinks in that I want to be this one day.
Yep.
And that then takes time and effort. And it's a pretty similar outlook to what I look at with, if you want to be good at something, you really need to be good at it very young.
Oh, definitely.
And then sometimes by the time you actually get to that stage, you're fucking over it.
Yeah. I mean, I was a late starter to footy, but because I'd played all the sports that kind of make up a good footballer, so soccer,
rugby,
basketball, I knew I could catch a ball, but I was generally drafted because I was an athlete and because I picked up the game quickly, because when I put my mind to something, I just want to be the best at it. So I would, even at North when I got drafted, I would stay back after training and kick probably 300 balls at the post, which is probably why my hip's knackered now. But because I knew that if I wanted to play at the elite level, I had to improve everything and I had to train harder than everybody else because I was coming from so far behind.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's, there's an analogy about, what do they call them? The ballerinas on ice, like the
flatley. Or,
the ice skaters.
Ice skater. Or like the,
I forget the terminology.
What is it? The flatley, the dancers, whatever they are. The ballerina dance, No,
I feel bad now not being able to know what the profession is, but it's basically, where they dance on ice in the Olympics. So they basically said, to
are
be
they ice dancers? Sounds good.
There's a specific word for
Olympics is coming up just February.
That's true.
China, spying and everything.
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
Yeah. All right. Oh, we just did, I think.
Figure skating.
Skating. Fuck. There it is.
All that cortisol, mate, just deletes. Stress, cortisol deletes the memory. Sorry. 10,000 hours. So you're right. 10,000 hours of practice of something to become, let's say, perfect at it. But
okay. Well, that makes sense.
So you imagine how many hours you would spend playing football. So you imagine how many days 10,000 hours is.
Yeah.
It's a significant amount.
That's a lot. Can someone work that out for me? That is a lot when you look at it like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I started late, but I had to pick it up as I went. But you kind of, the thing I miss about, I don't say I miss about football, but I never grew up with it, so I didn't have that desire to play at the elite level.
Yeah.
I just wanted to play because I just happened to be good at it and take to it quickly and naturally. And my parents are they were the main drivers of me playing. Like I just didn't want to play. I wanted to play rugby. And I remember my mum coming onto the school fields because I went down to training once and they're like, "Oh, your son's tall and athletic." And Roger Merritt was there, and an ex-Brisbane Lions player. And he said to my mum, was like, "Oh, he could probably get drafted if he picks the game up pretty quickly," because they're starting to draft project.
So how old were you then?
17.
Yeah.
So because they were drafting project players from other codes, put them in the IS, train them up, basically train athletes. And I just didn't like it. First game I sat in the ruck. I was like, I'm just jumping into a bloke who's just knee me in the side and the back. I'm like, this isn't fun. Yeah. And then I went to full forward and some prick was just elbowing me in the back all day. I just turned around and belted him, and I was like, got a 50 and then got reported. I'm like, well, this guy, I just didn't understand the game. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going back to rugby. And then my mum came down to the school and she literally dragged me off the field and said, "No, you're playing AFL, whether you like it or not."
So your mum's pretty hardcore.
She was, yeah.
So to see that you've moved to 8 different schools in such a young period of time, that really does show the life of an entrepreneur, which is your dad must have been. Yeah. And your mum as well. Yeah. So that's a lot of high and low. How does that affect you as seeing that as a kid? Like, oh, another school. Like, does it make you a bit of a loner, or does it make you like, oh, I've got to be another group of people, another group of friends? Like, that'd be quite traumatic.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. But I guess it hardens you for the business world. But I reckon, the hardest thing for me was leaving England at 15. Yeah. So I was in grade 10 then at school and had a pretty good group of mates and had a very, very established network of people. Like I'd spent 15 years building, and literally cut them off overnight. Come to Australia to a very hostile environment at school, all boys school. Yeah. Just bitchy.
But what was the reason to come to Australia?
It's a better lifestyle.
For your parents? So
for everyone, really. Yeah. I mean, Birmingham's not the greatest place in the world to live.
It looks like a hole.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry for anyone listening from Birmingham.
Anyone in Birmingham will tell you that. Yeah. And if they don't, they're lying. Yeah. It's not a nice place. Weather's pretty ordinary. People are pretty angry, but you learn a lot of street smarts there, because if you go out over past the time of 4 o'clock and you're not got your wits about you, you'll get mugged, robbed, bashed. Like it's a very volatile, dangerous society, and you would never want your children to grow up there. So we moved to Australia because we saw the great weather. We moved to the Gold Coast. We'd been there on holiday.
The dream, mate.
So
Gold Coast,
I mean, it's a pretty far.
Surf, sun, sand.
Pretty far from Birmingham, that's for sure. So we moved from Birmingham, where it was like -2 in October, to 42-degree weather in Queensland when we first arrived. So it was a bit of a culture shock. But that was tough. So then I ended up with a few mates at school, and then I moved to Melbourne. So I moved away from those mates, and then didn't really pick up any mates in Melbourne until my second year, when the next round of draftees kind of came in. But yeah, football doesn't really breed good friendships. Yeah. It's too competitive.
What school did you go to on the Gold Coast?
I went to the Southport School, or TSS.
So from what I'm hearing, it's been an extremely lonely process. New groups of friends moving through, your parents trying to give you the best that they can. Yep. Hence why you had the highs and lows, which is crazy in itself to hear that. And then you to come over, and with football, you get drafted. I'm assuming you have to leave your parents, or did they didn't come with you, I'm assuming, or?
No, I went to Melbourne, yeah. So the school, it all happened pretty quick, actually. The school did not like me playing AFL at all. So I was a rower, actually. Got out of rugby.
You good size for a rower.
I've heard you're a rower too, JP. See? So anytime you want to reel off a stat, mate, let's go. Toe to toe, let's see who's a better rower.
I'm an athlete. Cox, right? I am an athlete. You know what? I reckon we could do a virtual roll off.
We could?
Yeah, I reckon we do. And we'll invite the Winklevoss
right now, you'd beat me.
Yeah.
With one hand.
Look, I've been doing virtual workouts.
Have you?
Yeah, every morning. Nice. It's a new daily routine. But
what's a virtual workout? Oh, on your VR.
Yeah. Right. See? So it's gone to another place here. It's a new world we live in.
Is this a special shout out to our sponsor, Chibo, for supplying the caffeine?
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. But it's going through that through your childhood, your parents seem to nurture you quite a lot, but you're put in so many situations. Do you find that that's, I believe, successful business people, it's lonely?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
From what I've seen, I look at my old man, and he has lots of people he works with and lots of people that, have been with him and do anything for him. But when I really look at it, he has a very, very small friendship group.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a very lonely place up the top because you have to sacrifice so much to get there. What's your view on that?
Yeah, well, I think about coming out of Citrus. I've had a little bit of time to sort of digest the last 35 years of my life. And you start to question, you have this identity crisis.
Yeah.
And friendship definitely comes into it. And to be honest, mate, when I'm scraping the barrel with you as a mate, that's when I know I've fucking hit rock bottom, But seriously though,
thanks.
That's all right. When I think about who I'd call to go out for a beer or who'd want to go out for a beer with me, it'd be like 2-3 people at most, and most of them don't even live by me. So, if I think about on the Gold Coast, I don't have any mates.
Yeah.
Brisbane, don't have any mates. Melbourne, I had a mate, but we moved away, and so it does become lonely. But the loneliness also enables you to concentrate. Right? So even though I had a brutal time at school, and don't get me wrong, people have much harsher times than me. I'm not saying, woe is me. I'm not living in a third world country fighting for my next bag of rice, but everyone's problems are real, right? So at school, one of the good things about not being in a friendship circles with all the cool kids was that I was like, you know what, cool, I'm going to spend my time focused on sport.
Yeah.
And I got into rowing. I did that for 2 years. And then I kind of got sick of looking at the back of someone's head. And, I decided a mate got me into footy. And I thought I can do both. Rowing's a morning sport, footy's an afternoon sport. I can do both. Went to the school and I said, look, I might miss one weight session a week, but I was the best rower by a mile. So I didn't need the extra training. I trained every day in the off season. And they said, no, I got to pick one or the other. I said, well, if you're going to give me that ultimatum and be so petty, I'm going to pick AFL. And then I didn't realize how political the school was until I had teachers saying to me like, oh, we lost the head of the river because of you. I'm like, you're my maths teacher. You shouldn't even know about this. How do you even know? And then it just clicked to me how political it was. And then, when I got drafted, the school got asked, you want to make a comment. One of your pupils has made it to an elite sport. No, we don't comment on AFL.
Wow.
And the only reason I turned it to my formal was to give the finger to everyone. So, because I'd been drafted that morning. And,
That's a bit of fuck you.
Well, a little bit, yeah. I don't say I'd like to sink to that level, but I did it gracefully. But camera crews were there and stuff, and it was quite enjoyable for the 3.5 years of torment that I'd sort of copped, and it was a bit embarrassing for everyone too to sort of have these news crews there and just try really hard not to acknowledge that they were there.
Yeah.
And refuse to comment. It's on the Gold Coast. This is, I think it was like the Marriott or somewhere. I forget where it was.
What a baller!
I was at the formal for like 10 minutes, and then schoolie started that night. But because I've been drafted, I was so conscious about
someone taking a photo of you. Drinking.
No, I don't fucking care about that. I got drafted in North Melbourne, so if you didn't drink, you weren't in the culture. I would have got more street cred turning up to North, having had 16 beers that night and being in a bathtub of VB, But the first thing that went through my head was...
I guess to go to Richmond, you needed to be in a bathtub full of hookers and blow. You would fit in just well in Richmond. So I guess you picked the right scenario.
Yeah, no comment there. I literally went back to my hotel room and I kind of partied for like half an hour, and I immediately started thinking about, I got to get home. I got to get fit. I got to train. Like, how fit am I? Am I AFL ready? And I started just to panic, and so I went home and basically.
So what was the phone conversation about that? Who was who called you? How did it go down? Did you know it was coming? I mean, you must have been speaking to clubs.
No, I had.
Because they make a big deal of it these days.
They do,
I think I
yeah.
saw something on TV. Like in America, it's a massive event with it. But here, I've never seen it. But the other day, I saw it. I don't follow football at all. But
No, look, I was not going into the draft confident. I'd been given one nice comment from one of the recruiters. I got interviewed by 2 teams. One was Brisbane.
Yep.
And I really wanted to go to Brisbane because I wanted to stay home, and Brisbane were the premiers at the time. And I just remember having a meeting with their recruitment guy at the time, and he just didn't like me at all. He just, maybe he thought I was some silver spoon sport prick or whatever, but he said, oh, look, we may take you in the rookie draft if we're desperate. I'm like, yeah, because that's what you tell an 18-year-old kid whose whole life is built around making it to the AFL. So that didn't leave me with a lot of confidence.
Shit.
And then I had a pretty nice conversation with the North Melbourne recruitment guy, who ended up being a really terrific top bloke. And he said to me, we're going to take you in the 3rd round at pick 58.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe him, though, because I'd just heard from the Brisbane that I was not even worthy of a draft. I was lucky to be rookied. They'd rookie anybody. I don't say rookie anybody. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
Because talented players get rookied.
I was going to say.
Mel Michaels is a rookie. And half the Brisbane Lions premiership teams were rookies. But, just the contrast made me very nervous about the draft. And then I remember watching it online, because you could watch it on the internet at that point. And, right on the money, pick 58, their first pick, because they traded all their picks away that year. I got picked up, and it was a very surreal moment. Like, you don't quite grasp the fact that you've been drafted. And then, but then it also kind of hit home that I was, about to pack up and leave, and then went to Melbourne, super lonely there. Like, older players don't really want to babysit younger players. Yeah. And there wasn't many 18-year-olds. There was none. There was me and Jesse Smith. There wasn't any 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds. The earliest was 2 21-year-olds that got drafted that year.
It's a bit more old school.
Yeah, Josh Gibson.
These days, they're churned out a lot younger.
Gibbo was like the only one who came in that draft with me. But he was a Melbourne guy, big friendship group in Melbourne. He was 21, so he was mature. He was already playing at Port Melbourne at the time. So, he was nice. Everyone was nice, but just not. Like, I lived by myself. Like, so.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, the guy who ran player development at the time, nice enough to give up his apartment and give it to me and say, you can live in my apartment. But I lived in this new town by myself. So I just cruised up and down Port Melbourne, just shopping and doing nothing. But luckily, I had training to keep me occupied. But
that's a big shopping.
That wasn't a great start.
$30,000 a year, mate. That lasts a long time.
And then you sort of forget how to forge relationships after that. And then I went to the Crows, and the Crows is just super competitive, And so one half of you is trying to make friends, and then the other half you is thinking, well, it's you or me, like, who's going to make this team. And if there was one criticism I would make about that culture, it was ruthlessly competitive, but maybe it went too far down the line of being competitive too much internally as well. Where when you're climbing over your teammates to try and get a game, and you're just looking at them as your enemy.
Yeah. And then you look at the exec teams as they're doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me started on how the execs run, but that's a whole different ballgame altogether. But you don't deal with them day to day. Like, you deal with them once a year, when it comes to negotiate your contract. But so they're just businessmen doing their jobs, right? But the players, you've got to kind of establish early in the piece where people sit in the pecking order. And I think that if you do that, then players kind of know, I'm not the first round pick. I'm not going to play for a while. It's going to take a while for me to get into the team. And then you kind of know where you sit. Whereas I guess the problem with having clubs that kind of develop that equality, you could call it equality, and that's probably not a bad thing, where you got a lot of mature age players kind of competing against each other, is no one's spot is ever safe.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's a good thing or not.
Yeah.
But all I know is that you get a lot of players playing under fear. And it's very hard to forge relationships.
100%.
Meaningful ones with a bloke where it's just you and him, and if it's your career or his. And then when there's money on the line, it gets even worse.
I look at it even in retailing, you're not judged every week. So every week, you have
during coronavirus, you are, mate.
What?
During COVID, you are.
Well, yeah, that's daily. But but in general, you're only as good as your last. We are saying is you're only as good as your last visit. For instance, if someone's coming, and it's all. But when you're on that spotlight, and that's a profession, you're getting paid to do that profession. You're not just judged by the team; you're judged by the fanatical fans out there, plus people like me who I don't give a shit about what happens, but I like staring people up, and football people go crazy. Like, there's no doubt about it. And I'm assuming you would have had some crazy fans back in the day. Do you have any?
Yeah, that was. Yeah, luckily, I was on their good side for a while.
Okay, so I don't want to go into any fan stories because I don't want to go down that track, but. The irony.
There's not many stories out there.
The irony of all of this.
Other than the Port fans really like me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting story.
That's an interesting one. But
I remember going up to the Alma one night and having a beer and just talking to people and got talking to all these Port fans. And they're like, come over to Port. We'd love you to have you at Port. And funniest thing was it was the showdown where I didn't get picked.
Yeah.
And I was playing well, and I probably should have got picked. I got picked a week later, but it's by the by. And funnily enough, wherever the players sit in the ground, because it was a Port game, so we sat in the away crowd, so we were kind of behind the goals. All the execs were there, all of the managers were there, all the players' wives, and these blokes who I'd happened to be having a drink with were standing fucking 6 rows in front of us in the standing area, and they've turned around and gone, fucking Brad Moran, we'll have you at Port, mate. Come over and play for us. The Crows, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I say? Just don't say anything. Just pretend you don't even know him. And Alicia's like, that was the guy from the Alma. I'm like, because this guy was a massive unit too. He was like 6'7", built like a brick shit house. And the kind of guy that if you're screaming your name, you're kind of thinking, where's the police? But it was so funny. And my wife's a diehard Port supporter, so she was always trying to get me to go to Port. And
is she?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
All our family were diehards.
I saw your son the other day wearing Port Power hat, and I was like, come on, bro.
Well, the Crows just don't send me any merch, mate. So. I mean, I'm trying to convince him, and the form's not good at the moment, so I can't turn the TV on. So, the Crows board need to pull their finger out and send me some merch.
Well, they should. And the irony of it all is, I mean, the brand.
But I'm still backing the Crows.
Yeah.
When I take him anywhere, he's in Crows uniform.
Yeah.
I go out, scrape the barrel of my wallet, get him a Crows Guernsey. They're hard to get in Queensland.
Yeah, they are bloody hard to get.
But all his uncles and cousins keep sending him, Port shit, which I have to, keep.
I guess there's a bit of irony about the whole football piece, and I'd rather hear about business for you, but it sort of sets the message of the tone of how you've got to where you've got today. It's a bit of irony that, looking at the current form of the Crows, their last brand value was 2013 at $20 million. You and I, we could buy the Crows. Now that would be fun.
That'd be a bad investment.
But we could. And we could, maybe you could change the way things about fuck.
I don't understand I understand how clubs have value anyway because they're all owned by the AFL.
Correct.
And that's half the problem. So don't get me started on.
Yeah, I don't want to go down that track.
But that hinders the clubs too, though. Like they're not really allowed to kind of do their own thing. They're governed by the AFL, the SANFL, and
Drakes were governed by Foodland, and every messaging that came out that we did, we had to make sure it was okay with the Foodland guidelines. Yeah. So all of these pieces put together meant Drakes couldn't truly be Drakes, and that until we built the warehouse, which is now a couple of years ago. Far out, time flies. Was a couple of years ago. It was
great investment, by the way.
Sorry?
Great investment, by the way.
Yeah,
great. Well done, Rog. Well done, JP.
A great investment. And we've been offered well over $100 million to buy the place and lease it back to us. And, it's obviously worked out very well for us. And we couldn't truly get rid of those shackles until we went out Drakes. Yeah. And that was a massive commitment to not only our team, but to the state that, hey, we're going to stand on our own 2 feet. And I understand what it's like working under that because people just, we still get called Foodland today, and there's no doubt people still, that's years of saying, hey, Foodland, now it's Drake's, and I'm...
Yeah, but like Coke changing their brand, right?
Correct.
You're still going to say Coke because it's been conditioned.
Correct. So for me, I understand what it's like to work under the guidelines that you have to. And now, anything that we do now is 100% our fault. If it's good, it's good. But if it's bad, it's totally our fault. And I think the change of mindset of people within our own business, when we actually realise that these decisions we are making, they are being made for the best of the business. And we need to make sure that when we did have that breakaway, we were actually delivering on everything in our minds we thought we could. Because when you trade under the Foodland banner or under Metcash, you sit there and go, oh yeah, it's their fault. Like if they produce a bad catalogue, it's their fault. And for the first time ever, it comes straight back onto us. So it's all on us. And that's a huge difference. And I think you notice that when you go out on your own. But before that, I want to, have you had a paying, like, have you ever worked for someone other than football? Because you're clearly working for the club, but.
I had a couple of jobs.
I'm curious because I know a few entrepreneurs, which is a real cool term that people like to use now.
Yeah.
And I think everyone needs to put that on their LinkedIn profile.
Yep.
But
they're a startup. They've got a side hustle.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a startup, mate.
Yeah. So for me, have you worked for someone?
Yeah. I worked for City Beach for
City Beach clothing store.
Yep.
The one down at Glenelg?
No, in
the city.
No, in Pacific Ferry and Gold Coast.
Oh, okay.
I was in Adelaide then. Yep.
Yeah.
I worked there for all of 3 hours. Yep. They put me upstairs in the tagging department, and I tagged about 400 shirts wrong. Put holes in every one of them, and then the woman came in and said, who has tagged these incorrectly? And luckily half the people had gone away for lunch. Oh, it must have been Dave. He must have done it. And then I went for my lunch break and never came back. So that was my stint in retail. That's where I got my retail knowledge from, mate.
Yeah, I could see why you're so entrenched in retail now. Is City Beach still around?
Oh,
nah.
Yeah.
So if you are, I just hit Brad up, I think.
Yeah.
I'll
pay the $400 worth of damage now, but I didn't take my paycheck for that shift. But no, my old man ran car dealerships for a long time, so I was used to cleaning cars.
So you're a car salesman. Is that
used car salesman, mate?
Used cars. So you don't strike me. You know what? I've seen some of the clothes you wear, like the salmon.
Never sold a car.
The salmon
I make
jeans.
money, but yeah, keep going.
I've never sold a car that make money. Fuck, welcome to my world, mate.
Depreciating assets, mate.
Oh, no. Let's not get started.
Okay.
Let's not get started. So did you find any skill? What sort of skills did you learn selling cars?
I didn't sell cars. I washed them. But
Okay.
I look back to my parents used to take the piss out of me as a kid because I was suspended at school in private school for extortion. So I would...
This is going to be good.
I would sort of know that the kids were really rich, and so I would say, oh, you want to play football with my ball at lunch? It's going to cost you £1.50 or something like that. And so I'd start generating income from charging people to play with my football at lunchtime. And so I'd go and invest in a nice ball because everyone wanted to play with the best ball. But I didn't know I was doing it. I was 7 years old. But I just wanted to do it, and I just wanted to have the money. And I wouldn't do anything with the money. I just collect it. And the only reason the teachers found out is because I had like $100 worth of cash sitting in my desk at school. So I was a little bit of a rebel then. And then...
That's like under the age of 10?
I was 7.
Do you know what I was selling at school under the age of 10?
And on nappies.
I was selling Coke.
Oh,
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah. Someone's phone's ringing. It's vibrating.
It's from Iran. But
Is it?
Oh.
See how quickly that lit up. So you know what I was selling? I remember that bit, Ollie. You know what I was selling at school at the under age of 10?
Tell me, mate.
I was selling Coke.
Oh, yeah.
But back then we had the small...
But you were getting them cheap from your old man. So
100%. So we'd get the crates of glass bottle Cokes and no one...
Gold.
You couldn't get them. So I would rock up to school and I would be selling each individual one. And that was...
Start of your entrepreneurial journey.
I was under 10.
It's gold.
And And it was a big business for me where I was saying, Dad, I need more Coke. And like he would bring it home because sometimes he'd buy extra and we'd stash all the stuff that he'd buy. And so we'd have toilet paper. Funny to say that now, but back then, like this is 20 years ago when I was in year 10.
Yeah.
And
how old are you now?
Yeah, it's got a 4 in front of it. But anyway, back then it was like, you don't realise you're doing something at the time.
No, there's only 2 other memories I've got. And again, my memory of up until about the age of yesterday pretty much is gone. I can't recall anything anymore. But I had 2 memories that stuck with me. In year 11, or maybe early year 12, when I knew we were kind of all breaking up for school, I remember my old man basically said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. It gets you on in life. And so I think one of the entrepreneurial things I did is I went around everyone with a notebook at school, wrote down their name, wrote down their number, and I wrote down what their dad did. And you'd be surprised how many people didn't want to tell me.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't think anything of it at the time other than that. But for a kid to be conditioned to not talk about their parents' family, like, okay, maybe it's not as kosher as I thought.
Yeah.
But
well, you find that a lot now.
But what I wanted to do is I thought, well, if I leave school, I'll have a decent network of people that I could contact if I end up in X industry or Y industry or whatever it was. So I didn't know necessarily what I would do with it, but I knew that it might be valuable to do. And then the other thing is I was always pretty creative at school, wanted to do things, I was never normal. Like I didn't want to just go through the, school classes, and school was boring for me. Like I didn't have a long attention span. I remember asking my IT teacher at the time, I said, would it be possible to, it's when the iPhone just came out, I reckon, or smartphones were just coming out. I said, would it be possible to talk into a device and then have it repeat out a different language? And he goes, impossible. Never happen, ever. And I love it because, like, obviously IT guys back, like, this is 2003, so 19 years ago. It's amazing what people thought was totally impossible is now just Google Translate.
100%.
You talk to Google and it'll talk back to you in a different language. And it's like, the theme wasn't around, hey, we proved him wrong. The theme was around, like, they're probably some of the memories I think of where I was like, okay, what did I do that was entrepreneurial? But all I ever thought about when I was a kid was sport. That's all I wanted to be, was an athlete.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think about business too much until I got into sport. And then about 2 years into playing for North, I had a lot more time on my hands, and I just thought about starting a business because I knew that sport was never going to make me wealthy. And I knew that there was going to be a lot of time after school. After sport. And, I came up with a bunch of different ideas. Cleaning businesses, basically businesses where I thought that I could get gigs from people that liked the club.
Yeah.
And using my resources at the clubs to sort of springboard a business, which is ultimately what I did with NoQueue. Right, NoQueue was a good concept, a good idea, and a startup.
So let's talk
but
about
it was the corporate network of the Crows that got me there.
So if we, look, I think from school, whatever I could grab my hands on, I sold. I had a guy that could make ninja stars.
Yeah, God.
So they were great until some had an unfortunate accident with a pet and came back that I was the one that sold it, but there's no evidence that I sold this.
Did the JP brand in the
No,
stars,
I didn't do that. No. Well, the person that did it didn't do that.
Yeah, no.
And
didn't have a personal brand artist at that stage, mate.
No, not like I do now.
No.
But the other one that I could get back in the day, you used to get the porno mags.
Mm.
So you get that couples editions, black editions.
Wouldn't know anything about them, but keep going.
Yeah. And back then, this is technically before the internet, this is how you saw porn. These days you just go to, I don't know, what are the sites, Ollie?
Don't pretend like you can't read them off the top of your head.
I've never seen anything in my life.
So it's a bit different.
Sex.com.
But I could sell a couple's edition for $50 back in the day at school. And what we used to do is that some of them you rip the cover off and send the cover back and then say, look, and then I would happen to get my hands on this. because they were all going back. So I'd go into one of our stores, and it always used to happen before we were going up to the river. I'd go in there and and then I'd go and sell it. And in the end, I was getting more sales than I had product.
Yeah.
And we all know that's a problem.
Yeah.
Good problem to have.
It is supply and demand.
Yes. And that was quite a successful business.
Yeah.
Like even back then, I had thousands of dollars
wow.
saved from that. And trust me, I was living large at the lunch at the canteen.
You'd have had 2 slices of pizza to every
Mate,
other commoner's one slice of pizza.
Not only that, I was paying for my friends. Shepherd, if you're ever listening to this, Shepherd was the only one that got us busted because he started paying for stuff with a grey $100 bill. Now that was the end of the fairy tale, because then we had a bit of heat come down. Well, where's all this money coming from? And the parents are like, his parents and my parents are, well, it's not coming from us.
Yep.
It was coming from
Don't
selling.
use marked bills, mate. Come on. First rule of corruption.
No, he should have just kept on using silly. It was a poor form on Shepherd. It's probably why he failed year 7, because that little bit of that moment of madness cost us our whole business. I mean, I could have been Larry Flint.
Could also saved you from prison time, but you keep going.
Maybe. So that was my big entrepreneurial success back in the day.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground, but how the hell did you come up with NoQueue? And I think some people wouldn't have even heard of NoQueue. Do you want to explain what NoQueue is in your elevator?
Yeah, NoQueue was it was Uber Eats 11 years ago.
Correct.
There's your elevator, mate.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
without the drivers though, so
like,
we'd still rely on the like Marcelino do their own deliveries, but we would effectively create an iPhone app that let you order your pizza and coffee ahead of time.
So when you rocked up, it was
all
ready.
Paid for. It was totally ahead of its time. We tokenized credit cards, which at the time hadn't been done very well at all. PayPal was kind of like the only go-to, but you still had to put username, password. That was before Apple's keychains stored it all for you. So we had an app where you logged in once and all you did was enter a 4-digit PIN and you could make a purchase. So you were literally 3 clicks away from ordering anything. So it was really revolutionary at the time. But the one thing about startups is you realize that timing is 55% of your success statistically.
And some could say timing is everything.
It is. I mean, 55 is a significant proportion. The other percentages are split up into who the people are, the ideas sound, and how much money you got.
Yep.
And believe it or not, the idea is actually only about 7%.
Wow.
It's how much cash, are the people any good, and is it the right time? So you need a lot of things to make it right. And so then started, well, I first came up with the idea I was sitting in the movies before an Essendon game. Being an athlete, obviously you don't want to eat crap, so I thought, I'll have Nando's, but you got to wait like 20 minutes for them to cook the chicken. I was sitting there, I was the first people in Australia.
Was this at Marion?
No, this was in
I had
in Melbourne.
Nando's at Marion all the time.
It was in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And I had the first jailbroken iPhone 2.
Yeah, I had a jailbroken iPhone 2 too.
And I was like, this thing is really cool. Like, you can imagine what you could do with this thing. And I thought, well, imagine if I could just order my Nando's and just go pick it up and wait 2 seconds as if I'm not missed the film. And that's kind of where it started. And at the same time, I thought this iPhone could also order me a taxi. So I kind of had these 2 ideas. So I either start with this taxi app or I start with this food app. And then I met with one of the guys ended up being an investor in the company. And he gave me some good advice. He said, well, your total addressable market for taxis is 4 companies.
Yeah.
And if they all say no, you're buggered. Your total addressable market for small business is about 50,000. So if the first one says no, you're a good enough sales guy, I'm sure you'll get some. So I went down the food route.
Yeah.
So even before I knew what Uber was, I kind of had that concept of just solving the problem between the smartphone and what it could do. And the smartphone at that point could do so much cool stuff, and so many clever ideas came out of what it could do and how it connected the whole world. And so, I didn't have a clue about business at the time, but I knew enough about how to work my way around Google. And I took a one-pager to Rob Chapman at the Crows and just said, this is an idea I've got. What would you do with it? And he said, well, I'd go speak to John Sutton down at PKF. I'd go speak to Minter Ellison lawyers. I'd go speak to Alan Young down at Baker Young stockbrokers, and these guys will put you on the right track. And I did. I knocked on everyone's door, and they were all really happy to speak to me because I was a Crows player.
Yeah.
And we'd chew the fat about football for 3 hours, and then we'd spend 5 minutes talking about the business. And once they'd got their juicy gossip of how the club was going, and they'd give me their political opinions about what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. Got plenty of those. But it was really good because they would say, right, you need financials, you need a P&L. I was like, what's a P&L? What's P stand for? Like, profit and loss. What does EBITDA stand for? So it was a crash course on finance, crash course on stockbroking, crash course on how to get this thing off the ground. And I did probably 50 odd meetings in Adelaide with all the different angel groups and investors, and every single one of them said no. But it was good, valuable 100 hours, 2-hour pitches, 50 of them. Pitched to your old man twice. He said no every time. But I forgive him for that because his son benefited the Drake's family.
Don't laugh. Nothing more gratifying than saying, Dad, you know that we wanted to go 50-50 on Citrus? And he said, yeah. I said, oh, I'm glad you didn't. He was shocked. I mean, that's another story, but he was spellbound.
No. So, but look, it was high risk, and that company didn't end up that well. But at the start of it was just really trying to be industrious and use other people's skill sets and advice to help get it off the ground. And then I literally copied another IM that I saw as I went to, Alan Young and the stockbrokers and said, have you got like a draft of an old IM that I could use as like a basis point?
IM is a?
Information memorandum, which is basically a capital raising document, or what they call now a pitch deck. But an information memorandum was a lot more formal. Like a pitch deck, kind of like, here's an idea, here's a concept, here's kind of how we're going to go to market. And IM's like A to Z. So it's financials, business plan. It's like a 100-page document. That's what you used to raise money with. Nowadays, you just give them a 5-page slide deck and a presentation, and people think they're going to raise cash.
That's easy.
Yeah, it's so easy. So ended up just literally copying this thing, almost word for word. Like, they were totally different.
What were they selling?
They were selling medical devices. I shouldn't be so blasé, but I was like, I didn't know anything about anything. I was like, what's our addressable market? I was like, well, I'll just Google like how many shops are in the world. And okay, so I'd figure it out step by step. And every time I went and pitched to people, they would, go, have you thought about this? We're not investing because of this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason. And then what it does is, like, if you're a first-time founder, those 50 meetings are your education.
Yeah.
What's the educated market saying about your product? Timing and everything. And I thought I had a pretty good deck because I would show like the Apple stocks going up, Google stocks going up, smartphone usage going up. So painted a very good story, but if I look back, it wasn't enough. Like, the saturation wasn't enough, so we're a bit too early. But look, I got one guy in eventually, managed to get 50 grand off him, and then he was a pretty influential dude. So, once I got 50K off him, then I went round back to the other guys that said no and said, well, he's in.
Yeah.
And then it brought me some credibility, right? So I knew that I needed credibility first because I was a footballer. I was a Crow player. I was still playing at the Crows. So, I went and saw lots of high-profile businessmen around Adelaide, and they would like the story, and they'd kudos for you to start your own business. But I remember going and seeing like Rob Gerard, and he'd go, and he's so funny. He's such a funny guy, and he'd always give you such honest feedback.
I'd love to know what Rob said to you, because I can imagine being quite brutal.
It was no. Look, he gave me an hour and a half of his time, which, if you ask anyone, that is extremely hard to get. Yep. So he was generous enough to give me that much time, and a lot of good business advice too. But the funny thing was, he's still on his desk, and behind him he had a stack of like IMs, and a little stack about that big, and then another stack about that big. Yeah. And he's like, guess which ones I've made money off? And I was like, I'm going to be on that one. I promise you, I'm going to be on that one. And I won't talk about what he did in terms of like investment and stuff, because it's private, it's his affairs. But he was a man of his word, and he was a good guy. And basically, once we got the ball rolling, the dominoes fell. People came in, but I don't think people came in because they necessarily thought it was a great idea. I think they came in because
their friends are doing it.
Yeah. They wanted to be on a board with certain people. And they wanted to rub shoulders with certain people. And then it was basically the high net worth Crows alumni, right? Posse, whatever you want to call them. But
so for you, how much back then, first of all, I'm assuming they're going, like a football players wants to do this. That would have been, and it's tech.
And we're going to build a smartphone ordering app on the iPhone 3GS.
And they're like, I could imagine that.
What could go wrong, right?
So how much of like what they said during that period changed the idea? So the actual first, okay, I want something that you can order it and when you rock up, it's ready. And now we look around and that technology's everywhere, right? I look at it and go, fuck, you were just a little bit ahead. And when I mean a little bit, I would say a year, maybe.
No, we're 5, I reckon.
A bit longer than that ahead of time where right idea, right concept, now it's everywhere.
Well,
and it's almost...
Yeah, you're right. We're probably a year, but what we should have done was started with web and gone to mobile later.
Instead of going mobile.
The mobile take-up was not high enough yet.
Yeah.
So iPhone take-up was not as high as we thought. So unlike Menulog, who had a strong website, they were the dominant one in the market at the time.
Yeah.
We should have started with a website. We ended up going back to a website eventually, but yeah, it was probably, that was our first pivot. But honestly, before we'd even...
Oh, hang on. We've made it an hour and something, and that's the first time I've heard pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the first of many.
Yeah. So I was just, we're getting
So
into
we
it
pivoted
now.
before we even launched the product. So at the end of my football career, I went over to San Fran just to sort of soak up Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
And it's like,
How much money did you get in the initial raise?
we raised $1 million.
So $1 million.
$1 million, which in hindsight was nowhere near enough. And
I'm guessing that wasn't enough.
No, and any founder that would come to me today and say, what do you need to do to raise capital? I would give them very, very elementary metrics. So if it's your first time, you don't know what you're doing, you need 2.5 mil, which probably means you need to give away nearly 50% of your business.
Yep.
But that's about right, because you're asking for 2.5 million off angel investors on a pretty good chance that you're not going to make it. So your valuation should be around 4 mil, typically for a startup, 3 to 4 mil if you're starting from scratch, which is what we were. We were starting from a piece of paper.
Yep.
And that's a common mistake a lot of people make, is what they do is they go, we'll just raise enough, like 500K.
Give us a little bit of runway.
To build the product, right?
Yeah.
But then you're in a trap then, because what happens is when you, and again, a stockbroker once gave me some brilliant advice about raising the money before you build the product, because raising money and off a piece of paper is often like selling someone a block of land on the beach. You know, they're imagining a 5-story with a penthouse and a luxury infinity pool and whatever it is. But the minute you start building a Colorbond, blue board, they're going to start evaluating and going, this thing's not worth as much as I thought it was. So kind of a bad analogy, but once you start building products, your investors will immediately go to, we'll just commercialize it first, make some money, and then I'll put money in.
Yep. So that's going to market with maybe a product that's not
like
its
a POC,
features.
right? Yeah, like a proof of concept
MVP.
or MVP, right? Yeah, minimum viable product, which is the most terrible way to go to market. Because it was fine 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but these days there are I think I heard the stat, 175,000 startups start every day. So whatever you're doing, whatever you think you're doing, if you think it's unique, you're wrong. It's not. Like the difference between companies that make it and don't make it is the speed at which they operate at. You got to burst out into market, and you got to get ahead of the market quickly, and you got to just sprint, never float with momentum, like just go hard. And so by raising a small amount of cash, what you end up doing is you end up building this MVP. You can't pay yourself a salary, so you can't concentrate fully on the business. You're stressed about money. And then the first thing you do is you burn through that cash. And what do? You go straight back to your investors.
And go back for more money.
For more. And they go, well, you said you'd do this. You didn't do it. We're going to hurt you with valuation. We're going to take more of the money. So then,
so the investors end up getting more for less.
Yep. But and then they'll drip feed it to you.
Yeah.
And so then you're constantly raising money. And so where you should be focused on building your business, you're focused always on raising the next round. Which is a trap founders fall into a lot. So you're better off spending more time, because it does take time to raise cash, raising a larger amount up front, because what you want to buy is 18 months worth of runway at a pretty fully loaded expenditure plan.
Yeah.
Not a best case, because the first thing founders think about is best case scenario. Optimism kills everyone, mate. which is why Silicon Valley investors say, I don't want to invest in anyone that's done 2 startups at least, because you're too optimistic. You haven't had the shit kicked out of you yet, but it's true. Because the way I look at my second business versus my first is in my first, I was the eternal optimist. I was like, no, we can do it for this and we can do it for that. And we can achieve these great things. And you learn about forecasting and incorrectly forecasting. And then my second business, it was very pragmatic. It was, okay, we could do this, but I'm going to plan for a quarter of that. And so we raised enough money in the second business. I'm skipping forward a little bit, but just to kind of give you the start of both. We raised like 2 mil in the start of the second one. And we were way more equipped to build. We knew exactly what we were going to build, how we were going to build it. We knew we had the right people, and we knew how to get to market much, much faster, which is why Citrus went from like 0 to, a couple $100 million in 4 years because we'd done it before. Like we'd learned all the hard lessons before. So that's the first mistake founders make, is they just don't raise enough cash.
Yeah. So you need to raise cash.
You need to raise cash. You have to. And if no other reason
what happens if I'm just filthy rich? What happens if I just, not filthy rich, let's just say you're like me, so you've got money, but you're not filthy rich.
Well,
and what is it beneficial for me to put my own money in and go, well, it's why is it not, if it's my money, like I'm going to treat it better than your money, or am I?
Okay, so there's two things there. So we talk about you as the founder, or we could talk about you as the investor.
Yeah,
in it,
okay.
Right?
Let's say I'm a founder of a new product that's coming to market.
Okay, cool.
That's a bit of a cheat for me because in supermarkets I could force in some.
Yeah. But let's say it's outside of supermarkets.
Yeah, okay,
right?
it's tech.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing I would look at, or the first thing as a VC, me personally, would criticize you with is what makes you unattractive as a founder is the fact that you are wealthy, right?
Yeah.
And so when the going gets tough and shit gets real hard, you got a plan B.
Yeah, I can.
And you're
say,
like, you know what, man, it's not worth it.
Yeah,
I'm going to go back to my cushy life, my cushy house, and I'm good. Whereas founders that are got no safety nets, they're the ones you want, because they're the ones that don't have a choice. They're more likely to stick it out. Now, that's not saying that's true for everyone.
Yeah, it's what you've seen.
It's what I've seen, and I can tell you from my own experience, there are times where I wanted to give up, and sometimes it was sheer luck that I didn't, and sometimes it was my family that pulled me around, or my co-founder, or someone else would help give me a pat on the back or kick up the ass. But ultimately, it was because I had no choice. If I gave it up, I was a second-time failed startup founder, and I would have just been seen as just a failure over and over again, a repeat failure, to be honest. And so to me, that outlook was not good. And then I would have had no job, no money, income, et cetera, right? So, and you do see a lot of these side hustles, right? You see a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs, that want to be founders and CEOs. And I don't know why, but you've always got to ask about why are you doing it, right? Is it you want to get off on the power, or do you want the title? Everyone and his dog's got the CEO title now, and they're a 2-person business. It's like, well, you're the chief executive of one person. Like, there was once upon a time where you were called a small business owner, or you know what I mean? Like, so, and everyone wants to call themselves a founder and stuff like that. And it's like, well, I get it. And I love people's aspiration for wanting to do something, but are you a founder that's prepared to put everything on the line and put everything that you maybe not own, because most founders aren't wealthy, but
it could be,
but it's
just
your reputation,
house, or it's like, all of those things.
For me, second time round, it was my reputation. It was, and that was what scared me most about starting the second one. The first one, I was kind of just went into it as most first time founders should and do go in. They go in with blind optimism of you've got no idea what's about to hit you. You go in with this kind of, this is going to be fun. And it is fun to start with. The product stage is fun. The creative stage is fun. Then when you get to market, you get to the grind, and you got to employ staff, you got to fire staff, you got to get the financials, you got to report to your shareholders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Like developers.
Things don't go your way. You got to pivot 5 times before you get to an actual product that works. You got to travel overseas every 2 weeks. You got to do 15-hour trips to the US. I did 4 one-day trips to the US when I was at NoQueue.
Wow.
Even at the end, when I knew I was going to get sacked, I did it because I wanted the company to be successful. I flew to Boston. I did a day trip to Boston. So I flew from Adelaide to Sydney, Sydney to LA, LA to Boston. It was a 34-hour journey. I arrived in Boston at 5 a.m. I did the meeting at 8 till 10, and I flew back at 11. So, you do crazy stuff to try and be successful. And coming back to your original point around like self-funding or not self-funding, I believe that we always got asked, what are you putting in?
Yeah.
As angels always do. They're like, well, what risk are you taking, right? And at the time, we didn't have anything to give.
The idea, my time.
I know, my blood, sweat and tears, my mental health, compromising every part of my body and brain for the next 5 years so you can be rich. But no, that doesn't.
Did you just say that?
That doesn't have any value at the start, right? Because you're talking to investors. But no, in NoQueue, I did put in a couple $100,000 of my own money. But that was my super, and that's all I had, and that's the kind of thing. But with Citrus, I didn't have any savings, so I didn't put it in. But my argument to that was, look, what I bring to the table is I'm going to go and execute this, and I'm going to, and I signed a very, I'm sure you probably didn't read it, the shareholders agreement. I signed a very, very harsh shareholders agreement, because the second time round when I went to pitch to guys, the first thing they said was like, well, you're a failure. You got booted out of your last company. Like, that doesn't look good on paper, mate. Like, you are not looking good right now. Like, and you want me to give part with my hard earned so you can go do it again. So I was coming off the back foot big time. And I sort of said, look, yes, it was not the greatest ending, but let's spin another way. I've learned a lot of lessons. I believe that there's a market here we can execute on. I can use all those lessons and those failings to turn it into a success. And, eventually they backed me, but it was definitely a hard sell both times. But coming back to you, like founders putting their own money in, I don't disagree with it if you back something enough. But if your business plan is good enough, there is enough cash out there to fund it.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. People go, oh, bootstrap it, right?
So, Brad, NoQueue, how long was NoQueue going for? And what were some of the signs that you picked up that things weren't going right? Or did you not see any signs? That's a bit of I got to tell you, that's a pretty loaded question, but I want you to talk about NoQueue. I've got my ideas of what happened because evidently that's how I met you.
Yeah.
So for me, I first met you through NoQueue. You were selling software for NoQueue.
Used cars to you, man.
Yeah, I said peddling before, but you didn't like that term. But but that you showed a fucking slick piece of equipment, piece of software, and it was no doubt slick. And the only reason you didn't really get the deal from that time is because that time you wanted a volume of or whatever, and the option we went through didn't do that, which was great for us, probably not so good for them. So that's how I met you through NoQueue. How long did NoQueue go for, and when did you started to notice things were not quite right? Because you pivoted pretty hard with NoQueue as well, because you went from this product so you went from a product that, hey, you can get coffees or food there and then so you didn't have to wait, and then you literally pivoted to e-commerce.
Yep.
So
no, we pivoted a lot, and there's unpacking 6 years. I'll try and keep succinct because I could be here.
Yeah,
for a week.
I gather that, and you might fade away if we're here this long. We've got a little bit of fruit, some water, and Red Bull.
The Red Bull's appealing, but the fruit, you got some figs in there, mate. But Red Bull will give me wings. No, keep going.
Okay, so we will get through.
We will. So look. Citrus.
So I'll paint a quick picture. You're gone from a football player, got some money raised, albeit a very small amount of money in the scheme of things, with some influential people around the Crows, and then all of a sudden they all want their money, and it just doesn't pan out the best for them.
No. So they backed me in all the way.
Yep.
So one of the things I learned straight away was, in my first round, I gave away 60% of the company.
60?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I gave away controlling share.
Yep.
From the get-go. But I knew to get these guys to trust the plan and the business that they ultimately had to have control. And most founders will not give that up, and probably shouldn't. But I was a footballer. I mean, if I was them, I would never have given me control.
Yeah.
That would have been a ludicrous idea.
Yeah.
No business experience, never worked a job in my life. All I'd done is kick a ball around for the last 7 years. And I got this startup idea that's kind of futuristic, so it was smart of them to do what they did. And they were very easy to handle and cruisy for a long period of time. And it's easy for me to look back immediately after I got, shown the door from NoQueue and look back with a lot of resentment. But when I look back sort of 6 years on, I see things in a lot more balanced approach, So I was angry, I was frustrated when we finished. Obviously, I was heartbroken. It was my baby that I'd built, and it was all I'd ever known. And when you have it ripped away from you, you kind of feel, it's soul destroying, right? So and it didn't end well, and I certainly ended that journey of my life in a very bad way, both physically, mentally, and it took a significant amount of time and work to pick myself up off the canvas. But it wasn't always like that, and I was a large part of the reason why I got to that point. So the thing that educated me for Citrus and life in general, and some things you can talk about, I don't necessarily believe I'm that successful, but that's just generally my own insecurities talking, not necessarily what people from the outside would think. But I don't believe I'm that successful. I don't believe I'm that special. But newspapers will tell you otherwise, but I don't believe it, even though on paper it sort of says it. But I guess the insecurities are good because they make you always look in the mirror first. So, when I started my second company, and whenever we ran into troubles, I was like, okay, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? It's really easy to look at hiring staff and going, oh, that person was shit at what they did, or they caused it. It's like, well, I hired them.
Yeah.
How much research did I do? How much education did I give them? How much guidance did I give them? So, I look back and talking about the business itself, and I can talk about sort of the emotional damage, political side if you want, but the business itself, I said, we pivoted before we even hit the market. So I went over to Silicon Valley and I had an idea. I was sitting there listening to the head of Oracle talk, and then there was a keynote with the guy that started Zynga Games, which was Angry Birds, but Farmville?
Farm animals.
Farmville.
Or whatever.
No, where you buy bits of the farm, and he was like a billionaire overnight. It was like the first Facebook game. Was it Farmville? Not Farmville.
No, Farmville, yes.
Was it Farmville?
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway.
Ollie. It was
Zynga Games.
Ollie
Zynga Games. Yeah. So went over there and immediately thought, because we'd been selling it before going to market, and a lot of the chains that we'd speak to, like Chibo and like all the different coffee shops and all the different pizza stores and chains and stuff, would be like, oh, we love the product, but we don't want your brand on it. Like, we don't want NoQueue. We want our brand on it. And I was like, oh, no, but we've got the customers. And I was just sort of pretty stubborn. But I was over in the US and I was like, we need to white label this straight away, because that seemed to be the major resistance. So when I got back, I basically said to the developers, scrap everything we're doing. We're going to white label it and we're going to sell it as their software. And then when we did, immediately overnight, we started to get traction.
Yeah.
So, when Cafe...
Huge bit of that.
Yeah. I mean, we went from being business to consumer and business to business.
Yeah.
Which I can tell you, anyone that's launching something like that, you need a marketing budget of 10 to 15 mil just to get off the ground, even in Australia. Because you've got to convince consumers to use your product,
yep.
And then you've got to convince businesses to use it as well. So you've got to do 2 sales efforts, which is mammoth for a startup. And with $1 million in the bank, and we'd spent half of it on building the product, it was never going to work. So we pivoted to a B2B model, which is a lot cheaper, a lot more cost effective, and you can scale a little bit better. But we just found there was very little money in coffee, cents in the dollar. You need billions of transactions to go through, and we just weren't there. So then we sort of started to go towards like takeaway, like pizza stores and pizza chains. And we won a few big sort of national deals like Noodle Box and a few others that made us a bit of money. We won a global tender with Westfield out of Westfield Labs in San Fran, which is our big kind of scalp.
Yep.
And we won that because we had the best mobile tech they'd seen globally. So, that's a little tick for Adelaide's tech community, and a bit tick for Fusion, who are the Adelaide developers that helped us build it. And John Chaplin, who was a major driver of that build, albeit they built it for probably a quarter of what they should have built it for, because they didn't realize how big the bill was. But Fusion were awesome in bringing it to market, because we didn't have our own developers. So they basically, I walked into one agency and they basically gave me, 3 hours of why it wasn't going to work in grey walls and how every startup fails and 99.9% are going to fail. So I walked out thinking, oh, fuck this. And then luckily I went into Fusion's offices where it's orange walls and table tennis tables, and meeting John Chaplin for the first time, and they coined him in the office. They used to call him yeah because like he'd never say no to anything. And
So Fusion, where's that base?
they were in Rundle Street.
Yeah, they're in Adelaide.
Yeah, they are in Adelaide.
Yeah.
They got acquired by WPP, I think, in the end.
KWP.
Nah, WPP.
WPP.
A little bit bigger than KWP, but they're the holding group, but worldwide holding group for a lot of their big agencies. Anyway, so started the product, pivoted, realized that was the market, and then we sort of fell into grocery because a bloke next door to my old man's real estate business was in grocery. He was in an IGA, and they got talking. Oh, my son builds apps.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine that conversation.
Yeah. Oh, technology, the internet. You should speak to my son. So we ended up talking, and then they're like, so we'd been used to selling this thing for I don't know, $25 a month or $50 a month or $100 a month, and this supermarket guy comes out and says, I'll give you $100,000 to build something. I'm like, we're in the wrong industry. So I was like, okay, we'll build it. How can it be? It's just products on a page and ordering, and then started the mission of trying to turn our platform into a grocery platform, which I can tell you was really, really hard, because we weren't building a website or an ordering platform. We were building a point of sale translation system that took point of sale shitty data and turned it into usable, readable data on a website. So you would know, being in the grocery space, mate, that POS used to run off Coca-Cola was like C/CLA 2L. That meant Coca-Cola 2 liter. But if you take that and put it online, you can't search for it. So we ended up building this
Mate, descriptions. Oh my God, it sounds so simple.
And Coke were like, why are we on the fourth page? Like, because you're alphabetically on the fourth page. A root cola is number one, mate.
And then it's even what you came when you actually presented for NoQueue. It actually, that's how it worked. It was alphabetical order.
Yeah, and that's how everyone did it. Because we weren't sophisticated enough to come up with any algorithms at that point, and we were barely getting the products to the page. Like, if you could search for a product and find it, that was a tick. you were fucking miles ahead of everyone else in the industry.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. So there was that problem we had to solve, and then every grocer then puts their own codes in for fresh fruit. So we're like, thanks all you fucking IGAs for. Why can't you all say Apple's Granny Smith the fucking 8312, right? Why do you why do you all have to have individual ones? And so we're there trying to go like, oh my God, is it us? Or is it like, is this really happening? And then we're like, no, it's really happening. So then we ended up building most of our time this translation system, taking all these independent IGA point of sale feeds and trying to match them to something that was usable. And then we became a photography company because no one had any images of anything.
Oh my God.
So it was like
That's
fun.
amazing.
And then once we crossed that bridge, which we still never crossed because we were still trying to figure it out as we were going, because then we went to the US and the fun started again because nothing matched over here. Every barcode is different, every country.
Totally different over there.
And then we're like, actually all the retailers care about is profit and how quickly they can pick orders. So geez, we better build a picking app.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We built an exceptional picking app.
And it was very good.
Top notch. Even to this day, I look at all the e-commerce providers that we work with as Citrus and go, app is still better. Yeah. Because people, they don't understand the visual side of it. So what we built was a picture on an iPad that when you're a 14, 15-year-old picker walking around a store, are you going to read some text and then try and find an item, or are you going to see a big picture of a red can of baked beans and go, oh, that's what I'm looking for? So people are so visually aware. Anyway,
100%.
So we pivoted and then we actually started to get some traction. We'd found our space. So Nick and I, we said, okay, the Australian market's really small. Like, we're not going to get Woolies and Coles. And the IGAs were okay, but we couldn't build a big business just off the independents.
And tough to deal with too.
They were. I mean, there's a group in South Australia quite big that was a nightmare. Trying to sell to this young bloke who was supposed to be in tech, thought he knew everything about technology and e-com, and he's there trying to grill me about how a fucking e-commerce system should work. I'm like, mate, who's the expert here, me or you?
I wouldn't have fucking done that just for the record. But
Nah, but the first meeting we did have, you did give me a hard time, but just about anything and everything. So you're an interesting character to deal with, trying to sell to. But I think I tamed the wild beast that was JP of 7 years ago.
It was that long ago.
Yeah, it was pretty long ago. Because I was hounding your dad, and I was like, "Come on,
No,
Roger."
wrong person.
But I said, "This you need to be in this space." And he goes, "Go see JP." And I went to see you, and then
they wouldn't want to see it at all.
And I won't mention a few names I spoke to.
There would have been plenty.
There was a few that were just like, "Online's never going to take off." I was like,
it might.
It could.
like the
COVID's just around the corner.
Like that internet, they could switch it off one day.
That Google thing, that's short lived.
So you've got this new product.
So yeah, we finally got traction.
Yeah.
We went to the US. We just, did what seemed obvious, but to not many people very obvious. We just Googled like, what's the equivalent of Metcash in the US?
Yep.
Called them and said, okay, we're an e-commerce provider. Is there any shows coming up where we can come out? And they go, there's a show coming up, NGA in February.
I remember all this.
And this was like four weeks before the show.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it's 4 weeks before the show. There's no way you're going to get a stand built. I'm like, we can do it tomorrow. So we ended up building this, like, it looked like an Apple store in a flea market. Like, honestly, it was like the Apple store in a bazaar. It was brown carpet, brown curtains, Midwestern sort of white males who are in their 60s walking around looking at pots and pans and freezers. And we were there trying to in online shopping. They're just like, who the fuck are these Aussie guys, man? Like, these guys are either really smart or nuts. And we're a bit of both.
Yeah.
And so we went there and we jagged one customer, and it was Super Value, who are a massive wholesaler.
Massive.
And they took a liking to us because, we sold them the dream, and we showed them the one IGA store that we had live at the time. It didn't even work properly. They weren't happy with us at the time. So,
shit.
But smoke and mirrors never got in the way of a good business plan. But look, we knew our stuff, right? We knew what we wanted to build anyway. And so there started our US venture. We moved over there, or I moved over there, and we started to build it. And the shareholders were a little bit reluctant to kind of go over there because they didn't know the market. And to be honest, we didn't know the market, but we started to get traction. And I sort of said, look, there's the future. Not here, not in Australia. And eventually went over, started to build a bigger business. We hired some US staff, including a US CEO, to lead the business, which kind of made sense. To me, it didn't make sense at the time because I'm leading this business from the front. I know everything about the tech, the industry, how to talk to clients, customers, the staff. But from a shareholder's point of view, you go, okay, well, when does a 28-year-old hand over the reins and to someone who's more seasoned and who's done it before? And that makes total sense, right? And it happens a lot in businesses. And so I was quite happy because I was pretty burnt out at that stage to go, you know what, someone else wants to be the CEO. I'll just be the product guy because that's what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was just a lot of like arguments about what was the right thing to do. I wanted to go much, much harder at the market and just try and take land. And, maybe we weren't ready to take the land. Maybe we were. I don't know. Like, it's hard to say who was right and who was wrong. And then eventually, I just ground these guys down. Like, they got sick of me, and I would have too. Like, I was a bullish, arrogant prick that just said what I thought when I thought it, and that didn't resonate too well in the boardroom, to be honest. And I look back, and that was part of my, definitely one of my flaws was just not holding my tongue enough. And, I irritated the few too many people a few too many times. And whether I was right or I was wrong in the end, it didn't matter because too many bridges were burnt and it was unworkable.
Yeah.
So it was either all them or me.
Yeah.
And, they made the right call.
So they ditched you.
Yeah.
They sent you to
pretty
look
much
after Australia.
Yeah.
That's what I recall.
So I came back to Australia because there was a little bit of tension in the US office between sort of me and the new executive team, which always happens. You got a CEO coming in with a founder there. So,
you do.
They immediately kind of feel like you're always going to be in the way, all right? Because you're the emotional champion of the business. And so they've got to come in with you around and try and assert their dominance as the new boss. And it's very difficult with someone like me around too, who's just not a pushover, and I'm not dumb, and I'll call a spade when I see one. And so it's probably better for me to leave that environment. I went back to Australia to run the product, and then, a few things happened in between, just like logistical stuff. And then eventually it was like, you know what, we need to change. Things
See you later.
Yeah, things aren't going the way we want.
Are you still, have you got any shares in?
Yeah, I still have all those shares. But I had so much PTSD at the end that I just kindly asked them to remove me from the shareholders list and just say, look, good, bad, indifferent, whatever it is, like, it's a period of my life that I don't want to revisit again.
Yeah.
Let bygones be bygones. Let sleeping dogs lie. I made a ton of mistakes. I'm going to own those. I was hard to work with. I was not a great CEO at times. I had good ideas and good aspirations, but I wasn't a good business leader at the time. Like, I learned a lot of things the hard way and made a lot of errors along the way. So I think quite a lot of people were happy to see me burn at the end. I got quite a lot of abusive messages on LinkedIn from ex-employees. They're like, oh, finally fell on your sword, did you, mate? Like, so to have those, they were brutal and they stung a lot. But I reflect now and think, I could have been better.
Yeah.
I could have been better. But like, no one's perfect.
No. But
so I left the shares. Nick was obviously still a shareholder too. He would get the kind of monthly, quarterly recaps, whatever they were. But for me, to see the name was like a bullet. And so I just couldn't do it. It was so much PTSD at the end of that business. And I realized that I'd lost the plot about a year before I left, because I remember driving home from Next Gen after trying to work out and work at the same time, and started thinking I was having a heart attack. So I had atrial fibrillation, which is caused from basically high amounts of stress. Drove myself to the ED, and they're basically like, you're stressed, you've got an irregular heart, you've got this wrong with your heart as well, an underlying condition. It's probably not good for you to stress as much as you do. You need to start to wind back, otherwise you're going to end up dead. So the next morning I flew off to the US. It was didn't really care too much about my own body at the time, but that was the first signal to say, the stress is starting to catch up with you. And when you're mentally tough, like athletes are mostly, you just push through the pain barrier. It's always the mentality, push through the pain barrier. But the problem is you can push through it mentally, but eventually your body will go, you know what, I've had enough. And I'm going to tell you that you're knackered now. And then I just started having panic attack after panic attack, anxiety went through the roof, massive amounts of depression, the waves up and down. So, I'm not proud to say that I was on a lot of medication when I finished up there, but I was like, it was, but I needed it just to get through the day, to operate, to function. And, and I got to a point in my life where I was like, that's not healthy. And I realized that at the end, and I thought, well, a lot of these things are causing triggers for me. And I said, look, I've just got to cut it all off. Can't talk to anyone again from there. Just for now, like even the good people, I was just like, you just got to give me a few years. Just, I can't deal with this now. So anyway, so from there, I basically gave up the house in Glenelg, which we were renting, broke the lease, luckily through financial kind of, reasons, moved back in with my parents, and then started the job hunt. I started job hunting in Brisbane, went to like 5 recruiters, of which Citrus uses now and pays a lot of money to. And every one of them sort of said, oh, you're a bit unemployable, mate. In the nicest possible way.
We'll go speak to NoQueue guys and get some references.
Yeah, exactly right. So didn't have a lot of good references and had a weird skill set. So it's like, I wasn't corporate, and jobs where I was kind of suited to, so like e-com within, fast food chains and stuff like that. I was seen as maybe a little bit overqualified, and maybe I'd ruffle a bit of feathers, and I don't know, but I was just unemployable. So
just like that, unemployable. So
it was pretty humbling after sort of 50 job interviews that you start to think, oh, And they weren't all like, I wasn't trying to chase the big salary. Like some of them were like low salary stuff because I was thinking, you know what I'll do? I'll just get in and I'll work my way up. Like I'll just get in at the ground, show that I'm decent and I'll work my way up. But you couldn't get past the HR departments because they just had a strict criteria of ticking a box.
Yeah.
And I just didn't tick any of the boxes.
Yeah.
I ticked the one at the back that goes like damaged goods.
Don't hire.
Volatile at best. At best, he's going to come in and ruffle all the executives' feathers and tell you what a bad job you're doing. So you know, it was a very humbling experience. And then, you know, Nick and I got together and you know, Nick wasn't doing that well either. And he was a lot older than me. He's sort of, you know, I forget how old he is now. He wouldn't want me to say.
He's probably old.
He's
older than me.
Man.
So he is an old man. Nick's a very old man.
He's got more hair than you, don't it?
It's okay. It's not about how much hair you've got. Far out, you know. I'm mentally
He's got a bigger
young.
bank balance than you
That's
now,
my wife tells me.
Mate, what did I say to him yesterday? I said, every $1 million in your bank takes a year off your life, mate. So, yeah, you know, you're in your teens again. So,
Nick would be loving that. Anyway, how did you come up with Citrus then? Like, did you actually think, fuck, I can't get a job. I need to run something else. How long is this time frame here where you've, you know, got some time to yourself? Your wife's then going, Brad, you need to get a job. You need to help this family. What sort of period of time was it?
Yeah, no, you do feel a lot of guilt as well, sort of being selfish and running a startup for a long period of time, which is about your dream, not your family's dream, really. And then you sort of have a humbling experience where you get fired and you sort of got to move on. And I didn't want to do another startup if you paid me. Like, if you paid me $1 million to start it, I just did not want a bar of it. Not at all.
Like, Brad, I've got a good idea.
Yeah, no chance, man. Like, this is why people now, they go to, like, people get nervous, as I did when I first started NoQueue. Like, I've got a really good idea, but I don't want to tell you in case you go do it.
Yeah.
Man, I am the last person in the world that is going to take your idea and do it right now because I know what the journey is ahead. So it could be the best thing ever. It could be the next Bitcoin. It could be, you know, the next Google. So I wouldn't do it even if you gave it to me. So I think for me, it was more just about my wife sort of just saying, look, every door is closing for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, the one will open, you know. And
so that's what.
Well, Nick and I got together probably, what did we go for? We got fired on, you know, August 30, 9:38 a.m.
Oh, not that you fucking kept track of that.
No.
How'd you get fired? Was it a phone call?
No, it was just a meeting with the two directors.
It's a meeting.
They were really nice. They just said, look, you know it's time. We know it's time. Time to move on.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, no worries. Thanks. It was very amicable and they helped me amicably get out of the company and it was fine. I knew it was coming. Like, I didn't know it was coming for a year. I mean, to be honest, I got to the end and I'm like, I'm surprised I lasted this long.
Yeah, okay.
You know, but look, Citrus was an afterthought big time. Like I did not want to start a startup because I just knew what I'd just gone through. I was thinking, if this is why would you go through it again? Like, why would you do that 6 years again? Mm-hmm. Like, best case, you come out of it with a few $1 million. Like, best case. Yep. Worst case is you're a 2-time failure that's lost the better part of his 20s and 30s with 2 kids that you've neglected and a wife that you've neglected. So to me, there was a significant amount of risk just even contemplating a startup. And like, you've always got good ideas, right? The ideas are 10 a penny. No offense to anyone out there with an idea, but they say statistically 95% of people have a good idea in their lifetime, right? But it's not about the idea. Like, when you work with grocers all the time, like, we could see, like, looking back at looking back at NoQueue, like, we started to work out, okay, why do we have such a hard job selling that? Like, so we started to dissect NoQueue a bit and go, well, what would we have done differently and what would we have done maybe better or whatever it may be? And so we knew retail really well and we knew the grocery industry really well. And, you know, we had this idea where we could try and monetize the shelf space. And there was already a competitor out in the marketplace doing it called Hook Logic that got bought by Criteo, who are now sort of our major competitor. I mean, Hook Logic had been around since 2011 selling online ad space.
Wow.
So it wasn't the fact that we were doing something that was totally innovative from a conceptual point of view, but it was about execution.
Yep.
And so we said, well, what if we could build the kind of Google AdWords of the, like, making it super easy for advertisers, the self-serve aspect, and build Stripe.com, which is an API for payments,
Yep.
and kind of mesh those together and build it in a way that's going to just overrun the market, with all the competitors that are out there at the moment.
Yep.
And that's what we set out to build. We set out to build something that was super easy to integrate and solved a problem. The biggest problem we thought with e-commerce and supermarkets was it was cost. It was cost heavy.
Yeah.
So being in grocery,
Very low
you're still
margin.
probably still burning money.
Yeah, totally. Very low margin, like selling a fridge
Yep.
or selling, TV. It's got a far bigger chunk of money in it than selling a can of baked beans
Yep.
and some bread. And
Yeah. So at best, most grocery operators are around 2 to 3% operating profit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Net.
Yep. And the average order size online, let's say it's $100 for round numbers. So you're operating at $2 there when the person comes into your store, picks it themselves, and then checks out, even by themselves now too. So with the cost of online, you've got to pay one of your staff, which is typically going to take upwards of an hour to go around and pick. Maybe they're fast and pick 2 in an hour, so it's half an hour. So it's let's say they get paid $10 an hour, just for argument's sake. That's $5. So you're down $3. That's before you put it on the truck, the refrigerated truck, which is probably costing you $30 an hour to run in fuel and the leasing costs. So anyway, money pit.
100%.
So
I think we reckon we lose around $11 every order.
Yeah, that probably makes sense.
So that's what ours is.
Yeah, Tesco were quoted as saying it was like equivalent of $20.
Yeah.
But it was the market share they would build doing it and getting that customer retention and the data to eventually use, right?
Yeah.
So, we thought, well, what if we knew that brands bought like in-store shelf space, like they pay for end caps and they pay for the middle shelf.
Well, when they do, like supermarkets, you pay for eye level.
Yep.
Anywhere in that eye level, front displays, gondola ends, fridges at the front of shops,
Yep.
like everything you see at a supermarket. Well, it should be is there for a reason.
Correct. People think it's not by design.
It's
by
just luck.
design.
The dude built it or she built it there, so that's why it's there. Not quite.
Yeah, exactly. So, Google AdWords is no different, right? People don't get past the first page of Google. In fact, people don't statistically get past the first 3 links in Google. So, we kind of married all that up together and said, okay, well, we're solving numerous problems here. Retailers don't want to get into online because they're burning cash.
Yep.
Brands want to put their products at the top of page 1.
Yeah, not in alphabetical
Not
order.
in alphabetical order or whatever order someone else decides.
Yeah, volume.
And then we decided just to do it better than Hook Logic and Criteo at the time, right? Or try and do it better than them. So I shouldn't say we did it better. Like we tried to do it in a different way. And they were only in America. They hadn't quite come to Australia around the world yet. So anyway, we put a pitch deck together and it was basically like 3 pages. It was a picture of a physical shelf and a picture of a digital shelf. And we said, that's going to turn into that eventually. And I said to Nick, like, I'll do 1 round of investors. I'll do a few meetings, and if there's no bites, we're done. Like, I don't want to do this again.
Yeah.
So of course, the first bloke we meet, it's like, this is great. I mean, 200 grand, here you go. And I'll help you raise the rest. So then started the fucking journey. So like, I was like, okay, well, I guess we're in then. I guess we're doing this.
This is it.
This
First
is it.
guy got lucky.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Literally first guy. And then, but he knew a bit about this. He knew a bit about the story that we'd been on. He was one of Nick's dad's mates. So he'd known about us for a while and known what we'd been through and all sorts of stuff. And that was kind of like March. So it was about 7 months on from NoQueue. So it was a long time between drinks. So of kind of stressing about having no money and all sorts of stuff. And then we started it and we got off the ground, raised a couple $1 million. Again, structured it differently so that we had controlling interest this time around. But we had to give up basically, our firstborn in the contract. We basically said that we weren't ever allowed to pay a rise ever, even if the business was doing well.
So how much did you and Nick pay yourselves?
About 100 grand each. Yeah. So enough to support a family of 4.
Yeah.
And live okay. But we weren't living the high life, that's for sure. And then, we basically got off the ground. We recruited, built the product, got really lucky early days with some of the recruits that we had. So we hired a good CTO. We hired a really good first few engineers. So we basically built the Citrus product with 5 guys. Yeah. So we were taking on Google, Microsoft, Criteo, these companies have got market caps of, trillions with teams of 20,000. And often we'd always get asked, like, how big's your tech team?
Yeah.
And we're like, it's like, oh my God. How many? Well, if you include our offshore team, it's about 50 something or other. I forget the last time I checked. It's like,
Offshore teams.
45 offshore guys getting paid $4 an hour to do tech support. But you couldn't stare a big retailer in the face and tell them that you'd done this with 5 engineers because they just wouldn't take you seriously. They're like, really? You're like, how are you going to support our infrastructure? It's like, well, believe it or not, you don't need 10,000 engineers to build a good product.
Yeah.
So we literally got to market in 8 months, which is record speed. And then we launched with a few. Well, we did a soft launch with you.
Yeah.
Got the ads going and got the system going and got a few guys in the US going, smaller clients, and then we got Dan Murphy's here going. And
that's a big contract.
That was the big one, right? Because it was the first real client that had good volume.
Yeah.
And at the time, like they were all guns blazing too. They're like, we want to go hard, we want to go fast, and we were just like, we were thinking every client was going to be like this.
Well, you'd snag. Yeah, keep going. You snagged some fucking big clients.
We did, yeah. But Dan's was definitely the start of the bigger clients. And they wanted to launch on December 1, which is their busiest day of the year.
Wow.
So our guys had gone from maybe doing a few hundred ad requests a day to 5 million ad requests a day in the first day.
Wow.
And so we're thinking, oh man, like I really hope the system doesn't shit itself. Because our reputation and our entire business will go in the toilet with it. Because if that had failed that first time, big companies don't give you a second chance.
Yeah.
Like we would have been turned off. In fact, we were turned off after an hour because our system wasn't something wrong with the technical thing. We managed to fix straight away, but if we'd have gone down again, it would have been finished.
Yeah.
But we weren't, and the testament to my team, they built a fantastic product and it worked out of the box and coped with the load. We were returning ads and we served 1.4 million ads in our first day.
Wow.
So and that was we all remember that moment. All the things we did after that, we signed massive clients and we expanded overseas and we made a lot more money off a lot of different companies. But we all remember that midnight before of just thinking, when this ticks over to 12:01, they're going to put it into production and it's going to start. And you'd be surprised how many people buy alcohol at midnight, at 1 a.m. in the morning.
Really?
Oh yeah. And then it started at like 9 o'clock in the morning. It started to really peak, and then we got through the day and we had a beer and we're just like, how good's that? Like that's what you do it for. And then all fucking downhill from there. But no, it was. But that was the start of the credibility, right? So you build a product, it works. It worked kind of exactly how we wanted it to work. And then we the big guys like Coles and Woolies, they were much harder. Procurement teams, longer contracts. Probably took another couple of years really to get those big guys going. But we'd set off. Immediately from day one, we had teams in the US and the UK.
Yeah.
Because we knew Australia only really had like 3 or 4 big fish that were worth getting. And then overseas, we basically, not that they were our insurance policies, but we knew if we didn't get the Australian market, which was still a flip of a coin, like there was no way, even with the best product, that we would ever get those big guys to work with us. Just for no other reason than it could have been the wrong price, could have been political, we were a startup, we were dealing with a lot of data, there's so many reasons why you'd say no to us. And then we started to sign some guys in the UK and the US, and then Citrus, everyone kind of thinks, it was an overnight success and it was kind of like a rocket ship, from A to Z, and you just knocked it out of the park straight away. But it wasn't like that. We were in dire straits again in February 2020. This is before COVID hit.
Yeah, just before COVID.
So this is before COVID hit. So we were out of cash. Just before COVID, out of cash, off the back of a 7-month capital raise that we didn't complete.
So you went for another raise then, which I recall.
Yep, we went for an institutional raise.
That's right.
In the US.
What's an institutional raise?
Well, it's someone who's more strategic.
Okay.
So someone that's going to not only give you money, but access to clientele or access to their distribution network, access to a sales team.
So who'd you find in that period?
We went to everyone who was sort of in our space.
Yeah.
Not direct competitors, but like adjacent companies that were kind of similar to what we did, had the similar clientele to what we had, but they weren't directly competing. Like we would be complementary product to them.
Yeah.
And you know, we went to try and get acquired as well. Like part of it was that we were pretty burnt out. We were ready. We were done then, man. Like we were really done.
So that's after what, 3 years?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah. So you're starting to feel like, fuck, here we go again.
Yeah, it's well, truth be told, after 3 months I was feeling like that. So 3 months in, I was looking for a new CEO. Just to give you an idea of...
Which evidently was you the whole time.
Yeah. But unfortunately, I kept...
Come on, Nick, what the fuck were you doing, mate?
No, he was my lifeline, to be honest. But unfortunately, you know, as founders and as a founder, you know, I always make the reference of the Lord of the Rings. You know, if you ever watch it, you'd know that Frodo is the only one that can carry the ring to Mordor. You know, and every step along the way, he just wants someone just to carry it for a bit. You know, you carry it. But the problem with the ring is that it corrupts people, and only he could have the strength to, not only the mental strength, but he knew that he was the one with the purpose to hold it, right? And so startup founders are no different. You know, there's nothing more you want to do than give off the ring to, you know, someone else who's bigger and stronger than you are, or just to lend it, you know. Just Sam, just take it, just run out. You know, Golem's behind me. He's trying to kill me the whole time. He's give us a shepherd for a bit, you know, put on a block. But as founders, you only you can carry it, and is a good analogy, and it's something that I think if you ever want a visual representation of what a founder journey looks like, it's like Lord of the Rings. Because what you do is you end up going, okay, it's ultimately only one or two people that can carry it, right?
Yeah.
And without Nick, I'd never have made it.
Yeah.
Like, and there's a reason they say co-founders have a 30% more chance of making it than single founders, statistically, because you need that support. You're both doing as much as each other in different ways. And you know, it reminds you that along the way you need, you know, a Gandalf the Grey, you need like other characters in your life that are going to provide you with the support, but they support you. They're not going to go, here, Brad, let me take it off you. Let me run with it for a while. And so the minute that you come to terms with the fact that you're never, ever, ever going to be able to give up that ring, you're better off, right? And at that point, when I was looking for a CEO, I interviewed a few people, and I was like, you know what? I reminded myself of that concept and said, only you can do this, unfortunately. Whether you like it or not, you're in it now.
Yeah.
You're going to do it. You just got to get good people around you. And so, yeah, so we like, I can talk about the business growth if you want, but it's like one of the hurdles, well, to talk about the hurdle, like one of the big hurdles that we hit was,
So can you tell us the growth, the revenue? Are you allowed to say the revenue for 1, 2, 3 years and how that projection was
I
set?
can give you a rough estimate.
Yeah, or just give us a...
So
like, the thing that I think a lot of... coming from bricks and mortar and not tech, you know, you're used to things that make money, albeit a little bit, and that's probably why you watch it so much. So to see businesses that don't make money and get sold for, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars, it's quite hard for I reckon it's definitely, I speak to my old man about it, he fucking can't believe that that's how it works. But it appears that that's pretty normal for tech. The tech business shows lots of growth and maybe not so much profit, but that seems to be the key performance, and go, oh, okay, well, that's working. Someone who buys that sees the trajectory and they want that.
Yeah.
Is that...
Yeah, well, one of the aims I wanted to, like, with Citrus, I really wanted to. A lot of guys measure their success of a startup on how much money they raise, right?
Yeah.
And then a little bit about, like, okay, how much money are we making, like, gross? But one of the things I really wanted to build was a company that actually made profit.
Yeah.
As a startup, startups don't. You know, even big listed startups that are worth billions still don't make any profit. And that's kind of a trap that founders fall into, is they believe that I'll just keep building and building and building, and eventually someone will buy me and they'll work out how to make profit off it. But we went from doing like nothing in revenue to like 2018 we did $1 million, 2019 we did 5. And in 2020, we did 40.
Yeah.
And then 21, I talk about 21 because we're owned company now, but they're kind of the rough ballpark.
But it's a lot more than 40.
Correct. Yeah. In fact, I think we did 50 in 50 in 2020. No, that's kind of not public, but a lot of people kind of know that number. So you get kind of 5 times growth in your second year and 10 times growth in your third year. But the pleasing thing about the third year is we actually made a profit.
Yeah.
As a tech company. So, and we were going pretty hard on expenditure. But that year was not all rosy. Like that year was a tale of 2 stories. February, we were broke. We were out of cash. We were going back to the shareholders and they were basically fatigued. Again, they were fatigued. They put in cash a few times. I'd call you up every now and then and go, mate, put your hand in your pocket.
And you fucking did, and I wish I fucking did. I look at it now and think, Jesus, I'm going to have to get a loan off Brad soon.
Yeah, that's right. You did all right, mate. You did all right.
But you could see what was going on, and it looked good. Like from as an investor point of view, you could see you were picking up clients, picking up traction, and I think as an investor, I what I could see from the outside looked good, and I think I knew more because I spoke to you personally. My questions to you, and you probably, I don't know if you pick up on it, but it was more, how are you, Brad?
No, you were always asking how I was, not so much the business.
Yeah, because to me, I was backing the horse and
the jockey.
Yeah, I was backing the jockey. Well, that's fair enough. I was backing the jockey, and I could sense that it was tough.
Yeah.
It sort of makes you think, fuck, it's brutal being the founder of
it is, and often it was your phone calls that would not pissing in your pocket, but it was often phone calls from guys like you that would keep me energized, keep going, right? Because
I'm the optimist. Well, I am.
You are, but you're also, you don't ring up and go, well, how much money did you make last month?
Yeah.
And are we sticking to projections?
Yeah.
Are we on the right track? Hit forecast?
As a founder, are those sort of questions, are they needed? Do they need to, how do you, because that must happen a hell of a lot to majority of people that have set up a startup. How can, as an investor, from an investor's point of view, what's the best way to be able to handle the situation that you're in? Are those calls warranted? Do you think it's fair that they can ask that? Or is there a time and a place, like your monthly report, hey, guys, read it. That's how we're going. Is there some good advice for people that are investing that, the ones breaking the balls of the founders? Would you say
most of my investors are pretty passive?
Yeah. You did that on purpose, though.
Yeah, but they nominated a director to kind of look after them.
Yeah.
But he was very fair, and he would, I'd write a monthly report, as I promised I would. It was in my contract, and the other thing that was in my contract is if I ever left the business, all my shares would dissolve to nothing. So, I had a vested reason to stick around. I didn't have a choice. So Nick and I basically chained ourselves to life in that business. But yeah, the phone calls, they definitely help, and they're few and far between. But no, look, in terms of advice to investors, I guess you've got lots of different types of personas that people want to invest, right? People want to invest because they want to be involved or they want to be around a tech startup. Well, I think it's cool to be around a tech startup. Yeah. But as an investor, you've got to be careful, I think, because ultimately as a founder, you are accountable to their money, right? You should be held accountable. But to ask, to say unconstructive things is probably not useful. You better make more money next month, or you better do this. No shit, Sherlock, right? You don't have to tell someone like me, who's the perfectionist with an insecurity complex, driven to be successful with a failed startup behind me, that next month needs to be better, all right? I fucking know it needs to be better, and I'm going to do everything in my power to make it better. So I think it's more just about understanding who your founder is, just like understanding who your football players are, right? It's very similar. So most founders are get up and go kind of guys, and they're driven, and so you probably don't need to crack the drive whip over them, which is often where a lot of investors go. It's more around, well, what can we do to help you? How can we? What resources do you need, or are you thinking about this business in the right way, or have you thought about it in this way? So most investors will always be passive, and in that case, if you're a passive investor and you don't know the company that well and you can't add value, it's probably better off to stay in the background.
Yeah, just shut up.
Yeah, you don't have to be. I mean, it's fine. Like, I don't look at my investors and go, "Oh, none of you helped me along the way." You did. You all helped me. You put in all the money that got us to where we got to.
Yeah.
Very rarely you get, ones that are active, but we developed a friendship over that period of time between companies, and so you could call me and ask me all those hard questions if you wanted to, or you'd ask me how I was going and that sort of stuff. So I think for investors, it's an interesting one. For mentors, though, I think I was on a podcast yesterday with a startup group, and I said, like, the number one thing that founders need is a mentor or a couple, because it's a really, really lonely road, and more often than not, your customers, your staff, your investors, they need you to be the strong one. They need you to protect them, and when you're protecting them in the big bad world, it's not looking so good. You're always having to put on the brave face, and you can't really turn around to staff and go, you know what, actually, it's not really going that well, and I don't know if we're going to pay payroll next week, and you're going to be out of a job, and your two kids aren't going to be able to go to private school next week and stuff. So you can't have those conversations, right? So, but in startups, they happen time and time again, and if everyone knew, particularly with my first startup, if everyone knew how close we were to the edge of the cliff, they'd run a mile. So I think you've got to be super diligent on being like steely and having a good poker face and pretending like everything's really okay when it's not.
I think that's the same for any business, and
Correct.
That's true leaders lead from the front.
Yep.
And it may be tough, but I know in your mind you're thinking, oh, this isn't going to go to shit. It might not be best right now. So I think that's quite normal.
Yeah, no, it is definitely. I think as a founder, though, what you definitely need, it's not just even as a founder, it's any executive, right? Anyone that works towards the top of the pyramid of the food chain, right? You very rarely get people that give you a pat on the back. It's like, it's either you did what you said you were going to do.
Yep, tick.
Or you didn't, slap. So there isn't really a well done kind of thing or how you go on type of thing. And you don't get that from investors or board members because they have liability attached to your business. So they can't separate the two. So I know you did fairly well, but but again, I think you backed the jockey, not the horse. So if it had all gone tits up, I don't know, I'm speaking for you here, but I reckon you still might have called me at the end of it and gone, you know what, you lost my money, but I still might talk to you.
Okay, what are you working on next, Brad?
I'm working with Drake's for the next 5 years to repay my debt.
And that's... I guess.
But that seriously crossed my mind too. So, I thought about if I lost JP's money, I'd probably want to pay him back. So I'm probably moving back to Adelaide. I'm probably going to run his digital department for a while and then, pay him back my debt.
I'd have no people. It would. It's okay. It's all right.
No.
You left anyway.
It's no, but you do need mentors, right? And
I've been asked to mentor some people that when I've looked at what they're doing, I don't think I can add some value. And even joining boards, I actually said 2021, I'm not going to do any boards that I don't think I can provide some good, solid input.
Yep.
And that decision for me has been the best thing that I've done in my mind because it's no point me being on a board where I feel my contribution's going nowhere or I'm just there because, you just can represent Drake's in retail. Like if I'm in there and what I'm saying is not getting heard, not for me. And I think it should be that mentoring is, you need to be you have to pick the right mentor, huh?
Definitely. You got to, ideally you pick someone who's been there and done it before, but it is hard to find in Australia in the same kind of suburb as you, right?
Yeah.
But the Zoom allows you to speak to lots of different people. Yeah. And I've put my hand up and said, I'm happy to mentor anybody that wants to listen to me. But the thing,
here we go.
Yeah. Well, the thing I found most valuable and that, and I'll give you an example of how things change, is when, like, people that give you consultative advice when it's independent, so it's not bound to the company in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, totally independent. Very rare too, by the way. Someone's always got an angle.
Correct. So when it's independent, they care about you. right? So they and for most of the time, it's just get out of your own head. Stop overthinking it. Like, you just overthink. Stop thinking, do. Stop thinking, just do it.
Yeah.
Right. Quoting Nike now, but major sponsor. They were once upon a time. I used to get $5 a week. Me and Ronaldo, similar packets.
So similar.
I know. Anyway, I'm a foot taller, so who cares? He's got more McLarens than me, though.
I bet you he has.
He has.
We got lost there.
Where were we going
just
with
start
that?
thinking about cars. Oh,
I know, I'm just thinking about orange McLaren, Citrus, number plate.
I can't even remember what we're talking about.
That's what cortisone's for, man. Cortisol, I should say.
So
Mentors.
we were talking about mentors.
Independent mentors, right?
Yeah.
So you got to have an independent mentor, because the minute that they have a vested interest in your business, they then start to think about the money they've got. And then it's just human nature to go, my advice now goes from being completely independent of thinking about you to, I kind of want to protect that asset that I've got now. And if you're not quite up to scratch, then I'm going to get a bit worried. So it does blur the lines.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have mentors, do not at any circumstance make them investors.
Yeah. And I can see, I can actually see that.
I know it's a blanket rule and some people are like, oh, it's bullshit, but there's always edge cases, right?
Yeah.
If they're rich enough to blow all their money on you, cool, then that's fine. But if they can separate their money from their help, great. But not many people can.
Yeah, because they're always concerned about
Correct.
what's going on with their dollar.
They've got a couple $100,000 and you...
Yeah, that's good advice.
Generally speaking, they're not going to give you what you need. They're going to give you their slant.
Yeah.
And they should, because they're protecting their asset. So the good advice would be get some mentors early to help you prepare for what's going to come. So, I'm writing a book, not because I want to sell a book. I'm writing it because I was told by a therapist to write one, because it's about self-therapy and trying to kind of unpack everything that's gone on over the past 20 years.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else to a memoir to my kids, right? But the way I was going to structure it was kind of writing down the emotional side, but also all the constructive things that I would have done differently, or all the things that I did well that other founders could really learn from.
Yeah.
And go, well, if I was to write a book, if it was for me, I'd be like, well, hey, there's no way I'm going to read 300 pages because I'll just get bored in the first 5 seconds. Like
long emails.
I know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, okay, well, let's say there's 10 major components: capital raising, growing, recruiting, even selling a business has an art form to it. And then within those, there's like 10 subsections, right? So then as a founder, you can go, well, I'm in capital raising and I want to learn about, okay, how much money to raise. And the way I'd structure it is, okay, you need to raise between 2 and 2.5 million based on these assumptions, and write 5 bullet points. Okay, if that's enough for some people, which for me it would be, they go, okay, I'm done. That's justification enough. And then I'd write a bit that's like, okay, here's the narrative. Here's the 5 boring pages about why.
At one point.
So then you end up with a 300-page book that's effectively just 100 tiny little snippets. But this would be one of those, right? So the mentoring side is definitely a huge component. And I wish if I had my time again, I was lucky to have Nick. So Nick was my co-founder and mentor. And the reason why a co-founder is so important is because they know all of the deep, dark secrets. They know the struggles. They know the pain. They know the problems you're in. They're there to fight them with you. They've got as much on the line with you.
Not against you.
And so that's why co-founders work well.
Yeah.
But again, you've got to pick the right co-founder. Got to be equal.
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of things that can go wrong. But yeah, that was a big point for me.
So, if you could look at what you've given lots of nuggets of what's worked for you. Did you look to you're talking about mentors? Did you look to any other big business, or did you look at stuff that Apple did or Steve Jobs, or did you look at any other business and how you were perceived, how they they handled business and go, yeah, that's a good trait, or that's actually I can see how that can work for me.
Yeah, look, I think a couple of things there. So I've met people along the way that firstly, I want to say, like, all intensive purposes, we executed well, but I was extremely lucky. like luck is what got Citrus to where it is.
Yeah.
Nothing else. Fucking luck.
Yeah.
Because I could have been born into a different family. I could have been born with a different skill set. We could have started Citrus at a different time. Like NoQueue would never have worked. We got so lucky with the people that we hired, with the people that backed us. I mean,
COVID.
no one should have backed us, right? And yeah, COVID definitely nearly crippled us for 6 months, but then we came out the other end looking pretty rosy. The COVID definitely helped the acquisition. It didn't help the business.
Yeah.
I won't dig into that too much. It's boring. But when you're selling B2B, like when you're selling to someone like Woolies during COVID, they got no time to think about new product, right?
Correct. Okay.
Every one of their
fair
staff
enough.
members is in the warehouse. Like Woolies X, the whole team were picking orders because they had supply chain issues. Anyway, I forget where we're going with that. And you forgot too.
Yeah, no. I was more like, were there other business or other people that you came in for some reason and literally, like what's his face on the social network? He said, "Don't call it the Facebook, just go Facebook." Like, did anyone drop the
episode?
Did you have a Napster, or did you have something that someone said something and you went, "Fuck, bang on," and for no particular reason? Because I'm one of these. Everything happens for a reason. That's what I think. And
yeah, for sure.
You're building something, creating something that you were hoping was going to be a unicorn, like every single person that starts a high tech. Was there something that just flew in from a mentor from another business that you saw and that gelled with you, and why did it? Yeah,
definitely. So I think, like the book side, no. Like I've never read a book in my life. If that was a lie, I've read one. It was Eminem's autobiography. It was crap.
Yeah.
Because he didn't get real and talk about anything legitimate.
Which is unusual for him.
He's been soft. I don't know why, but anyway. So people don't need to read 1,000 books on startups. I didn't subscribe to any startup blogs. I didn't involve myself in the startup community at all.
Yeah.
Because what I found was largely a bunch of founders that wanted to go around these events with their t-shirts on and sticking their chests out, sort of pretending like everything was rosy and everything was amazing, right? Like no one really wanted to talk about the hard stuff about, actually, this is really hard and I'm struggling, and I know you are too, but you just won't tell me you are. So anyway, so we never really got involved in that area. There are a couple of companies that really helped me along the way. Nothing really that sort of helped Citrus individually, but like I was always fascinated with Apple and their packaging of all things, and Louis Vuitton to a lesser degree. But Apple, I knew because they were a tech company. They had an entire packaging division of like 3,000 people.
Wow,
that would focus solely on packaging,
on how it comes, because it definitely comes very.
It feels like Christmas when you open it, right?
Very cute.
So Jobs wasn't stupid. Like he knew that the first experience you have for the brand is the packaging.
Yeah.
Same as Louis Vuitton, right? So everyone keeps their Louis Vuitton boxes because they're so nice.
Yeah.
It's a little bit extra money to spend, but when you're talking about premium product.
Yeah, 100%.
And even back in the NoQueue days, we got Marcelina to change their pizza boxes to these bright Ferrari red with the Marcelina. We redesigned their logo because we said, look, people consume the pizza and then that pizza box sits on their...
Or in their fridge.
Or it sits somewhere for like the next 24 hours. So that is your first point of marketing. So make it amazing. Make it, when they get it, they feel like they're getting the most premium thing in the world. And it is premium pizza, but when you open it, whatever, like the first experience is the packaging. So when you're selling software, it's hard to sell packaging.
a little bit difficult,
because you're selling like vaporware at best, or things that people can't touch. They can't like pick up a cup and go, oh yeah, this is a pretty decent product. You know. So we built our product decks out really well. We always had them printed, and we would bind them as if they were like the most luxurious book in the world. Yeah. So and that went down really, really well. It was the attention to detail that I really enjoyed. And then Stripe.com, we modeled our entire business model off there as being just an API that people would connect to. Yeah. Because we knew from our experience with NoQueue that it's very hands-on. You had to be inside the supermarkets helping them launch, and therefore you needed a massive team everywhere. You want to go to the US, you got to have 50 people over there. Yep. Citrus, we had like 25 global clients from all around the world without leaving Australia, because they would just look at our documentation and then integrate themselves, and we wouldn't need to do anything. So we built it in a scalable way. So they're probably the two major things. But honestly, one of them, we went through
I mean, that point just there, you had a global business from Australia
yep.
without traveling across the world.
And then we grew our headcount from 30 to 150 during COVID without leaving home.
It's incredible.
So luckily we'd put in some hard yards early, which had helped that, but it can be done, right, with the right resourcing. And then the third and probably most critical one was how we built Citrus. So, you know, kudos to the MyFoodLink guys. Bit of a shout out to Julian on it here. So we had this big argument internally about how the system should be built. You know, do we go? I know we're going to get technical now, but like, do we go like front end, talking to the web to the back end, or do we go server to server? And I was always about speed. I was like, no, this thing's got to be fast. And it wasn't until Julian put his foot down with our team and said, no, unless it's 50 milliseconds or less, we're not going to use your product.
Yeah, because that's what they actually wanted for MFL.
Yeah, because they were concerned about the user experience of their customers. And so was I, but it took for someone like him to tell the team that it needed to be server-side, and then we ended up going down that route. And that was our point of difference for like the first 2 years against Criteo, because Criteo would put a piece of JavaScript on the front, on the website would call a back-end system, then call another one, and it was like a
and then it was like halfway through.
It was a 2-second round trip, right?
Okay.
So the page loads, and then 1, 2, then the ads load. Yeah. It's a bad experience, and that's why they often sat at the bottom of the page until they kind of reinvented the whole system. And so we were like, you know what, we're going to be back end to back end, server to server, and instantly we just resonated with clients. Like, you're not going to even notice.
That's the key.
It was, and so you know when you think about people that made a difference along the way, external people anyway, there's lots of people internally that always make a difference. But yeah, MyFoodLink made a massive difference. Yeah. If we hadn't have done that, we even look back now and joke and go, you know, they were more valuable than we let them know about. I don't know if they listen to this.
Well, they'll be, they won't be listening. Well, maybe Nathan, Julian, if you're listening. Well, just hurry up and get it working on Drakes. Again, let's. I've got some questions that we've had people send in.
Yeah.
I've got some real hard-hitting wrap-up questions. But just for an entrepreneur, that all those guys and girls out there starting, what did it feel like? You'd done the deal, so for Citrus, and I know you mentioned to me, I've got something, it's due diligence, 6 weeks, all this. You were using other terminology that it probably means something. You
didn't know the deal was done until the money hit your bank account.
And then it was
done 6 months before that.
And I kept on saying, like, it is for real. Like, you know, for me, it wasn't actually about them. It wasn't about the money. And I know I can say that now, but it actually wasn't. I kept on saying to you, like, you know, but what do they do at the end of that period? They just walk away, and you're basically saying, unless they find something really fucking bad, which wasn't what we told them, that, you know, what did it actually feel like going through that process? But I want you to end with what it felt like. What was the defining moment, like when you saw your bank account? How did that actually play out? Because that, if someone's growing a business, wants to sell a business, that's an amazing feeling that you can turn around and people look at, go, oh, it's 4 years of work, fucking lucky, blah, blah, blah. But it's really 12 years of work. What did it feel like for you? And what was like the main part? Like when it was actually in the account, is that when it was like, oh, okay, this is real, I guess? Like, because I know that you sent me a screenshot of what it was, and you had like $4,000 left in your account. And I remember where I was. I'd had a meeting with Bridgestone because we were talking about franchising. And if anyone's listening about that, take that to whatever you want. So we went to Bridgestone, and I remember I got that call, and I was in the car park, and you sent me. You go, it's dropped, and like I was like, I was fucking elated for you, and instantly I went to my phone. I had fucking nothing in there.
Bank with a second tier bank.
Yeah, second tier bank. Keep fucking drumming it in. And like for me to hear how you were and to the feel that what was going through the emotions to me was absolutely it was amazing. And I was so lucky to be on the other end of that.
Yeah.
How was it for you? Like when was it, you'll use the word surreal, but when was it that it hit home? And, I guess everyone strives for that feeling. Can you give us a bit of an insight of what it felt
definitely.
for you?
So I'll start with, I got asked this question at the 10-13 runway end of year thing last year with Steve Baxter and his crew. And I was up on stage and we're talking about exits. So we were the exit panel. There was a startup panel. There was a grow up panel, whatever. And, the guy next to me was talking about, how great it was that they'd got acquired and he was on cloud nine and all that sort of stuff. And I just sort of, I was like, look, when the money dropped, you were on the phone. Like, I shed a tear. Like, it was very emotional.
Yeah, I was full on, man. I think I was crying because you were crying.
Yeah, it was.
It wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for you guys doing it. And you get a lot of, you and Nick, your co-founder, plus your whole team.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And I kept on fucking refreshing my page and nothing was coming through. And I'm like, oh, is it real still, Brad?
Yeah. I bank with NAB, mate. Comes through straight away. I'll plug.
Keep going.
Yeah, so look, because even though the deal was done well before then and due diligence was finished, which is, what you were talking about, we knew it happened, but until, it's not even about the money, but I guess the money dropping was kind of like, okay, it's done. Like, nothing can stop it now. It's all kind of done. And nothing could have stopped it anyway. But a very surreal moment that it was more about, like, there weren't tears of joy. It was relief.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it was like 12 years of shit, all of a sudden became worth it. It was like all the demons that I tried to bury, in the last sort of, coming off a failure, big failure, and then like people still quite not believing in Citrus, and then it was just a moment of a very brief moment, because I'll talk about like the days after, but it was a very brief moment of, all right, demons are buried now. I did what I said I was going to do, and I'm not what people thought I was, which is a failure. So that was immediately kind of and we went out and like me and my wife I think I had half a glass of champagne because I'd like already had as much anxiety and emotion. I didn't need anything else. It tipped me over the edge. I think I had about 16 coffees that day. So I was like, I better keep it low key. I think I spoiled myself with some chicken nuggets on the way home. But it was
Macca's or KFC?
Yeah, all Macca's, mate. So look, it was that one moment on the phone was probably the most animated I ever got. But then, I talked about this on a panel, and I said
you know what? I filmed it.
Did you? Yeah, you did too.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, a lot of founders probably don't want to hear this, but the balloon doesn't burst.
Yeah.
Like, the stress, the anxiety, the insecurities, the, like, constant questioning yourself, am I good enough? Like, am I a failure? Am I a success? And I'm 7 months on now after the acquisition.
Yeah. And you've got another couple of years or a year?
I'll keep going forever. There's no set time limit.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel any sense of relief after it. Like, I knew objectively that I ticked a box, and I knew I'd done a good job, and I knew that it was a good deal for everyone involved. And we could have done many other deals at the time, and we were looking at many other suitors, but I chose Publicis because they were the best company, best people to work with and work for. And I thought, well, if I'm going to forge another 10 years of my career with these people, these are the guys I want to do it with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big testament to them, but it's also, a testament to sort of our characteristics as a founding group to turn down bigger offers, maybe to work with guys that we believed were just better people.
Yeah.
And but I remember speaking at this event and like Steve Baxter and everyone else in the room kind of just like went, like, because I said, if you think that selling your business for a couple of $100 million is going to solve your problems, you're badly mistaken.
Yeah.
Because it ain't going to solve shit. Like, you're going to wake up the next morning feeling the same you did the day before. If you've worked that hard for it and you're anything like me, which most founders are, I said it's not going to make you any happier, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I could say that because it had been about 3.5 months since we'd made the acquisition, since the sale, but since the money had dropped.
Yeah.
And Steve was quickly trying to like wind me up, because he runs a fund, right? So he wants to make it look fucking rosy.
This is good, guys. You want this? This is good for everyone. You're fucking happy.
It's all like roses at the end, right? The unicorn. You go swimming with unicorns or flying with unicorns at the end,
mate.
And it's just not like that. It's I can't describe it, but it's and a lot of the founders came up to me at the end of the sermon and the fucking church service, but they came up to me at the end of the gig and they said, "You know what? Thanks for being honest." And it's so refreshing to hear someone that's actually honest about how it actually feels.
Yeah.
And I said, and it's a really hard gig to get to that point and to get acquired, because there's lots of people that grow startups, start startups and kind of leave midway through or hand it over the reins and let someone else kind of. But being acquired is a whole different beast altogether. Something I'd never been through before.
Yeah.
And people were asking about how the acquisition went, and the guy next to me was kind of like, it was just kind of step A, step B, step C. We got a broker in, they did this, and it all got done. And I'm like, dog, you for real? Like, that's not how it happened. Like, you got to hustle, man. Like, this is a deal. This is a negotiating contract. You're selling your business, and so like, of course, I always keep the ethical line when it comes to what I want and what is best for everybody. But it's still negotiating at the end of the day. And so you're negotiating with 5-6 parties. You're calling lots of different people. You're negotiating with lower level execs, M&A guys. And it is like house of cards type shit. Like, it is cutthroat. And if you blink or you slip at any second, they'll sniff it out and they'll hunt you down, or they'll, basically. And you've got to be in a position to walk away.
Yeah.
And if you're never in a position to walk away, you're very vulnerable, So even if you're not, even if you are on your knees and you're crippled or you don't want to do it and you want to sell the business and you want to flog it, you've got to pretend like you're not, And so, like, we could have kept going. Like, did I want to go for another 5 years? No. But what gives me the confidence to say I could have kept going was I wanted to throw in the towel 5 years ago, and I'm still here. So my track record would say that I could probably go another year or two.
Yeah.
And
it could have been maybe it could be more money in that period of time.
It could have. But I saw COVID coming, and what I saw was a great deal for everyone involved, in my shareholders. And what I saw in the future was a massive amount of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And the last thing that I wanted to do was to piss it all up the wall to try and go double or nothing.
Yeah.
Because COVID, like, whilst we rode the coattails of COVID for a while, we're going to hit supply chain issues this year.
Yeah.
And what happens when there's no product on the shelf?
Yeah.
No one buys ads to sell those products.
Yep.
And so we could have been in a world of pain. and I kind of calculated the risk versus reward, as I always do. And I thought, you know what? This is a good deal. This is the good time. But we were on a great growth trajectory.
Yeah.
But you know what? Great. All the best to Publicis who now reap that benefit. And I'm so happy for that. And I'm so happy for them. But coming back to the founder story, around how it felt great for like an hour.
Yeah.
But you've always got to come back to the why. Why did you start this business in the first place? And by selling it for a chunk of change, did that give you what you wanted?
Yeah.
Is money your God? Because if it is, you'll burn out very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Because money's never, because you can't see it.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks unicorns, they think billions of dollars. But when you look at your P&L every month and it's like, oh, we did like 50 grand in revenue, or we did 100 grand revenue, you can't quite see that unicorn, right? It's very, very far into the distance. It's
magical.
It is. Well, most unicorns are 12 to 15 years old.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and another stat for you, which a lot of people don't realize, is that the average unicorn raises 100 million in equity before it gets to its unicorn valuation. So
that's giving up from that. That's giving a fair bit up from the founders.
Yeah, it also shows you're raising a lot, a lot of cash to get there, and that's valuation, not necessarily companies that have sold for $1 billion. Because there's still, I believe, there's so many companies out there that are on paper valued at billions of dollars that will end up being valued for not nothing, but cents in the dollar, you know, because it's just paper money.
So there you go. Yep. So grow your business, sell it for a fair bit of change, and still be exactly how you were. And that's only Brad. I mean, luckily for Brad, I have bought some toys which Brad can enjoy, and I'm
glad you are.
I'm so excited about that because Brad's got buyer's block, which I definitely didn't. So
you spent your money, I think, before it even landed.
But
there's nothing better. There's nothing more rewarding than as a founder that built value for shareholders to see someone like you go out, buy a McLaren, bright orange with the number plate Citrus on it, and just be super excited. Like, that probably gave me more enjoyment than the actual money hitting my bank account.
Well, I'm glad it did because I'm sure there's plenty more ahead for you, Brad. I've got some questions from people on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, go for it.
We've answered quite a lot of them, but Henry Davis, how do you feel about the incredibly high taxes imposed on pretty much everything you or your business does? So
Sort of a loaded question.
Your business wasn't set up in the Cayman Islands or, something clever like that?
It was not.
Yes. So you're paying your full amount of tax to the Australian government?
We are. It's a double-edged sword, right? Nobody wants to pay tax. In my tax bill, like CGT is still pretty decent. You get your 50% off. So at the end of the day, my accountant once told me, if you're trying to make money from saving tax, you're focusing in the wrong areas. Like, go build a business. Like, 74 cents on the dollar is not too bad, to be honest. 76 cents on the dollar is not too bad, to be honest. You can put it in a vehicle, but if you're a founder and you're 35, like, it becomes then hard to manage that vehicle.
Yeah.
You got to think about it. You got to like spread your assets around. You got to then, everything's owned by the company. So it becomes more hassle than it's worth.
Yeah. And maybe as a person buying it, that's less attractive.
Honestly, well, to me, I just thought, I'm going to owe the taxman some money. I'm going to pay it. I'm going to be done with it. That's it. It's clean. It's easy, right?
Yeah.
But what I will say about the government is, for any founder in Australia, like, be blessed that you live in Australia, because every year we claimed about cash back in our bank account. This is not subsidies, this is cash. They would give us cash back, about 600 to 800 grand a year in R&D.
Yeah.
So that's the government giving us back money, cash. So thanks, ScoMo for that one. The other thing we got is the accelerated commercialization grant that if we hadn't have got, I don't think we would have been as aggressive overseas, because when we raised $2 million, it was probably enough to do Australia, but it wasn't enough to go overseas.
Yeah.
So they gave us close to $1 million, the government, free cash. We obviously had to apply for it and be approved, but we got $1 million from the government to go do very speculative things that if we hadn't have done, with no way would have ever ended up where we are.
Yeah.
So look, no one likes paying tax, but use the government grants, use the government to your advantage. And if I look at, we raised a lot of money, but in terms of, apart from the last raise, which is our biggest, we only used about $5.5 million in capital to get to our exit point. So that's a fairly sizable multiple because of the government subsidies. So, we probably used $3.5 million worth of the government's money.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
So, they sting you at the end, but, they helped us along the way. They don't help everybody.
Yeah.
But,
So
like if you honestly, in Australia, what I will tell you from a founder's point of view, some actual real like credible advice is the problem. And I got approached by another couple of guys about this very, very topic, and I said, people who invest in startups invest in the people, right? And the people need to have some credibility. Now, if your credibility is based off a business that is built in Ireland or the Cayman Islands, that's a lot of risk for an angel investor to take on. And so you as a founder have to build credibility by building it on Australian shores with Australian engineers or Australian staff, because otherwise you're not going to get the confidence from your investors. So don't try and skimp 10% on your tax by trying to set up a vehicle in the Cayman Islands or wherever it is, because the ATO is pretty sharp, man. They'll get you one way or the other. But the main thing is investors just simply will not invest in something that they think has any degree of risk or future tax implications connected to it. And even the very mention of you trying to do that will make them very nervous to say this guy's focusing on the wrong areas. So my advice is do it local, do it Australian, and they'll back you.
Okay. Okay.
Death and taxes, right?
Yeah, death. Yeah, that's they're not going away. That's for sure. Dutchy324. What drives and motivates you to do what you do?
Fear of failure.
Yeah, I think you've answered that. So hopefully Dutchy can hear that. This
It's funny though, I didn't realize this, but there are two types of people who win, and someone told me this before I watched The Last Dance with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And there are people that win because they want to win, and there are people that win because they don't want to lose. And it kind of got me thinking, and that's even though it sounds the same, it's a totally different psyche.
Yeah.
So I watched Jordan, and that guy was just obsessed with winning. And confidence, but a pathological psycho.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone can see that. And most CEOs are psychos, and you have to be because you've got to be mercenary to run businesses and have no empathy. But that lack of empathy means you're just like on your game. But he just loved winning, loved it. I hated losing. I didn't want to lose, and so when I say fear was my motivator, like that analogy for me really hit home to: did I play well in football because I wanted to play well, or did I play well because I didn't want to play shit?
Yeah.
And I know the answer to that question. It's the same thing in business. I didn't want to win because I wanted to win. I wanted to succeed because I didn't want to fail.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Not a great driver, but often the one that drives people the most.
Radical RX Spider, which I know this clown. Are you faster than JP? So clearly you're not.
Over what distance and what?
I think he's talking about in cars, mate. So, depends.
Well, I supply JP's cars, so I can tone him down if I need.
I'll give Brad a lone Kruger, and I will take another car of my choice.
No, I can't drive sports cars because my anxiety gets too high.
Aaron Jennison, what gave him the initial idea to create the program? You've explained that. What makes an entrepreneur? I think you've explained that in many other ways, but have you got another way that...
Well, I guess a real entrepreneur is someone who doesn't do it as a side hustle, that's willing to go in, or all in, basically.
It's an all in.
It's an all or nothing. And you got to be prepared to sacrifice everything. To me, that's the difference between an entrepreneur and someone who starts a small business. Right. Entrepreneur is parallel to risk. Entrepreneurs typically take on significant amount of risk, and that is, obviously shown in many different ways, including taking capital off other people, which means you're incurring risk and debt into other people, and that liability. And I think that this is not a blanket statement. Again, don't quote me on blanket statements, but to me, when I look at entrepreneurs, I think about guys that are going all in, doing everything that they like. The Vino Mofo guys are good examples of guys that just went in all in hard early, just lived or died by their business model, pivoted a few times, and just gave it absolutely everything. Yeah. And then they were successful. The Catch guys are the same, and the Kogan guys are the same. They give up their last dollar and they go hard and they execute, and they're nothing holding them back. They won't take no for an answer. So, they're normally guys that end up at the end and go, I've got nothing, absolutely zilch in the tank.
Yeah. So it brings us to the, it's been awesome chatting, Brad, but it brings us, these are some hard hitting questions, like all the ones before you are insignificant compared to these. If you weren't doing what you're doing right now, what would you be doing?
You mean right here in the studio? Or?
No. It's one. It's always, why do people always try to question this question?
With a question?
With a question.
Yeah.
Like, if you weren't running CitrusAd, what would you...
CitrusAd, mate. Ad. We're a fucking ad company.
Yeah, same thing. If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing? Let's say money's not an object. You could do whatever.
Yeah. Well, money is not an object now, and I could do whatever, and I'm still working where I'm working. So I'll leave you with that thought.
Okay. Oh, that's your
and
answer.
And everyone can think about why. But if I wasn't working where I was working, I think the next chapter for me is probably trying to do something that's a little bit more using my entrepreneurial ability to go down the philanthropical route.
Yeah.
Try and leave a mark on the world, you know. I think that I'd get bored sitting around doing nothing. I think I need to get my, you know, body back in shape. You know, I've lost my biceps these days. You've got bigger biceps than me these days, which is a sad state of affairs. When I look at you and go, geez, your rig looks pretty decent. I'm like, I was once upon a time 6% body fat. I can rip the Adonis, but not anymore. 2 kids in the startup will do that to you. But no, I think like what's next? I think that'd probably be a better question is what's next for me. And I think after Citrus, like I still love the startup space. I think it's so interesting. I love solving problems.
Yeah.
That's all I do. I love solving problems. That's my passion. And if I can do that in a meaningful way, I'd like to do it. But if I can do it in a meaningful way by helping other founders, I will.
Yeah.
And everyone said, well, I'll start my own VC and I'll invest in founders, whatever. Or I'll start my own company again. But the reality is what I've learned and what I've done and what I've been through is much better scattered across 50 or 100 founders than it is me trying to do something else, right?
Yeah, just one.
I don't need to do anything else.
Yeah. What do you wish you'd known? What do you wish you had known when you first started out? And what's your advice to people wanting to start out in the tech industry today? There's something that.
Yeah. Well,
what could you tell the 16, the 18-year-old, the 20-year-old Brad that you know now that you just wish you'd bloody known?
It's a tough one because I think that being part of an entrepreneur and being successful is you have to walk through the dark doors blindly without knowing what's coming.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know who you are until you get smacked in the face and knocked to the canvas, right? As one of our great philosophers of all time, Mike Tyson, said, you know, about Evander Holyfield, right? You got a plan so you get punched in the face, right? Yeah. So like there are definitely strategic things that you can do. The thing that's not going to resonate a lot with founders in my next comment is sometimes the problem you think you're solving is just not there. So question your business model. Go out to investors, even if you're not going to raise capital, and test it, not with 1 or 2 or 3 people that say, oh, that's a good idea. Go to 50, 100 people and actually test it to see if it actually will resonate. Because if it doesn't, don't waste 5 years of your life with a lot of pain, right? If you do think you're onto something and you've got something great, as I said earlier, spend your time raising the capital. Because if nothing else, having $2 million in the bank is going to give you 18 months to 2 years of making mistakes, because that's exactly what you're going to do.
Yeah.
You're going to have every best intention to build a product. You know, you've got an idea about your market fit, your financials look pretty good, and you know, the chances are 1, 2 to 10 things are going to go wrong, and you're going to have to pivot, stop, change, move, and the money allows you to do that without having that pressure of, oh shit, we've made a mistake.
Got them changing your focus.
Out of cash, got to go back to the shareholders. And so I don't want to put people off starting a startup, but if you can try and find, not someone like me, but if you can try and find someone that has done it, but try and find someone that's failed a lot. You know, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of founders out there that I look at, and I think that every founder goes through hard times, some much harder than others though.
Yeah.
But I do look at kind of the Silicon Valley guys, and because I speak to a lot of them as well, and I kind of like, you've just gone from like Amazon to somewhere else. You've got to like, you know, you're from Stanford. You got a pretty nice resume. You got a pretty cool idea. You know, you got $10 million thrown at you in your seed round. Like, you know, that's dream factory for Australian companies. And, you know, they kind of get nurtured, right? But what they end up being is basically just employees of the VCs. Mm. So you look at a lot of those guys and you think about like they may have built unicorns, but you don't want to talk to a first-time unicorn builder. You want to talk to someone who's failed 3 or 4 times, twice, once, whatever it may be. And it's not even about failing. It's about, I work on it as like years done, you know, because if you don't fail, you've pivoted.
Yeah.
So every year that you've been in a startup, the amount of knowledge that you've gained, whether you've succeeded or failed, is immense. So you can just, you know, so again, search the world. Don't protect your idea. Someone else has already got your idea. Don't think you've got something novel. You don't. That was one of the hard lessons I learned early. People that make it are the people that are well capitalized, get to market quickly, and have a great support network. That's it, in a nutshell.
Great 3 tips there. If there was one thing that you could do that would have an impact on the world, what would it be? It's very, some people talk about themselves here. Some people talk about world peace. Get rid of hunger. Like, we have all sorts of, and then some people
You can get rid of hunger, can't you?
And
your milk's rather expensive.
Yeah. Jesus Christ, here we go.
Those
Let's not talk
farmers,
about
mate.
milk. I just had a whole thing about milk yesterday, so move on. So what's the one thing? Is there one thing that you think you can make a mark? Or are you doing it?
Well, I think it's first and foremost, it starts in your own 4 walls. If you can be a better husband and better dad, you're breeding 2 children that are going to go out and make an impact in the world, right? So first and foremost, I can't take my eye off that. So making sure that my kids are grounded, empathetic, understand the world. Like, my best gift is giving those 2 to the world, right? If I didn't have kids, I would probably attack more dangerous challenges like child trafficking, sex trafficking. Like, I'd go for the jugular. But what I know about that industry is that there's some seriously powerful people in it that would have you lynched in a heartbeat if you ever went out and decided to try and whistleblow. So it's a very, very dangerous one. But if I didn't have kids and I was a silo in the world, I'd probably go after something like that. Go for the jugular right at the top. Because it's dangerous, man. But it's fucking real though. Like,
it is real.
It's hundreds of thousands of people every year that are just taken and shipped off to other countries, and it happens here. It happens around the world, and I think there are tons of good causes that you can put your mind to. But to me, like, those people don't even get a fighting chance. Like, but look, there's you've only got to look around the world for 5 seconds and realize that there's tons of shit out there. So you look at, you can't cure everything. You can't cure cancer, really. You can't cure coronavirus, not in a massive way anyway. So it's about what can you do every day and what can you have an impact on. Yeah. And it's about having an impact on a few amount of people. So close friends, family,
and people
kids.
That you care. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. That's a very thoughtful answer. And we've got to the last question.
All right. Best till last, right?
Yeah. This is I'm just going to say it. If you died and got reincarnated or came back as
Black Panther,
a board game, what board game would best describe Brad Moran's life? It's been I've had lots of stuff here. I've had a bit of snakes and ladders.
No, I instantly go to, I'm trying to think of a game that relies a lot on emotion.
Oh, okay.
And fear of losing. And I think that Monopoly probably has that a lot, because you land on a property and you're like, it's not a great one, but I don't want anyone else to get it. So you end up buying Old Kent Road. Fucking, you own the brown, you own the mudslide, the shitstorm at the start, but it's like, so I would say, I thought about chess. I'm like, nah, chess is unemotional. And chess is all about just strategic thinking in a mathematical way, which is not me. It would be an emotional game. I thought about Texas Hold'em, like poker, because
it does get emotional.
Well, it gets,
and a bit of playing poker,
but there isn't so much of the fear of missing out. The thing that describes me most about poker and why I'm good for the first hour and terrible at winning is because I get bored and I'm the eternal optimist, thinking, you know what, this offsuit 2 and 3, there's going to be 3 threes on the flop here. I'm a chance. and so, there's a bit of that describes me. But I'd say Monopoly, just because of its complexity. It's linked to not wanting to lose, wanting to control the board. It's the control aspect. It's the fear of not getting things on the board. But I don't like the luck aspect of it. But even then, I look at my life and go, my life has been extremely lucky. Yeah. Like, fucking lucky. I'm the luckiest bloke alive. So rolling the dice is just like being in a startup. You know, you roll them. Sometimes they roll your way. Sometimes they don't. You land on Mayfair. What do? You take it or not? Like, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? So I'd probably say Monopoly probably describe me best.
Wow, and I'll go as far to say that's the most thought out answer. Clearly, Brad's a fan, and he's
prepped.
Clearly he's prepped. But that answer is amazing because that pretty much sums up everything you've said. And I have to say, it has been fantastic. I mean, to get inside your head a little bit, quite frightening, to be honest. And if I tread very fucking carefully. Jesus Christ, I think I need to go to a psychiatrist. But
this is how bad I got my psychologist retired. Can't see this bloke anymore. I need a way out. Oh, fuck it, I'm retiring.
That's a sign.
He was 75 years old.
Oh, he's getting on a bit. For us to be able to hear that and for you to download in such a raw, honest, open form, that's what people really want. That's hence why people actually follow the things that we do as a team, is because we say it how it is. You've said it how it is, exactly to the T of what has happened in your story. And it is a quite remarkable story. And it all comes back to fucking hard work and putting everything on the line. And that's what I've seen from as a investor, but as a friend, I class ourselves as friends, albeit me sort of wondering how you are and how you're coping with life. I mean, Citrus and Publicis, they've been fantastic for you to deal with from what I've seen. So, you know, I wish you all the best for whatever you're going to do next and not next, you're still at Citrus. So I know that the Publicis will be trying their hardest to, hey, Brad, what could you do? Because of your high caliber thoughts and deep thought too. Because, you know, most people brushed you off as a fucking football player that, you know, oh, he's a football player, he wouldn't know shit, and he's all of a sudden done amazingly well. And you, like me, we have a fair few haters, but fuck you guys, because the reality is we say things are what it's on our mind and we're not afraid to. And, you know, having you here and coming in, it means a lot. And I've told you many times, you totally changed my fucking life. And I know you've made a lot of other people very happy along the way, but it's more of the exciting part is what's going to happen with, you know, me knowing you. I mean, you're a young buck. I'm a little bit older than you.
I feel old. Have you had a hip replacement
yet? Yeah, not yet. We had your hip replacement. I haven't. But to be able to give that insight, especially, you know, the football is one part, but it showed how that set up a lot of how you are today, what happened with your parents in England, that's what everyone underestimates and everyone forgets. They just see the end product and no one realizes the lessons learned, the battle scars along the way. And you talked about a lot of that today, and you know, hearing it, and other people are going to listen to this that are starting up. They'll probably be fucking frightened, but you know, having those, if you truly believe in it, you can do it.
Great.
And that's exactly what you said, and I thank you.
That's a great acid test, though, because if you truly believe in it, then you'll take what I say with a pinch of salt, and you'll say, no, I don't care what you think, I'm going to go do it. But that is it. That's the test. That's the test, right? Is because even though I've explained that it is not easy, I can't explain to someone how it feels until they felt it.
Yeah.
But if they have the right motivations and the right intentions, and they got half a brain on their head, and they're good to people, and they don't, you know, they have their morals and ethics. You know, fortune favors the brave, but fortune also favors people that look after other people. You know, so no founder ever gets to the top without an immense amount of support from other people. Yeah. And anyone that tells you that gets to the top and has a chip on their shoulder or says that, yeah, it was all me, I'm awesome, they're cheats, they're lies. It's not true. Yeah. Everyone's got, you know, there are drivers, obviously, people drive businesses, but don't forget how lucky you are if you manage to get off the ground. You know, don't forget to reward people that help you, whether it's not reward with money, it's often time. People want your time. It's totally off topic, but my son, he's a very empathetic, emotional kid. I wonder where he gets it from. We were at Glenelg, and he saw a homeless guy, and he started crying, and he gets really upset. And he's like, "Oh, Dad, can we go give that guy like $1,000 or something? And I said, look, I really love your empathy, but I said, that's often like money doesn't solve all the problems. I said, he'd probably prefer you have a coffee, go take a coffee to him and a sandwich and go sit with him for an hour and talk to him like he's a human being, than throw $100 of cash and go see you later. So, you know, I think there's a huge degree of, you know, don't want to get emotional now, but we're the fucking end of the show. But there's a huge degree of being human that not only helps you start in business or helps you with clients or customers or staff, but at the end of the day, people buy into you. You're the brand. You're what they buy into. And if you're not genuine or honest or inspiring, like, it's probably not for you, right? You've got to, those are traits that you're normally born with. The inspiring stuff is a little bit harder to develop, particularly if you're an introvert, but I'm introverted. But if you ask anyone in my business, am I an introvert or an extrovert? They're like, fucking, he holds the room like the Wolf of Wall Street. But I hate it. But I know I've got to do it. And someone said to me at a function the other week, they're like, it's just weird watching you because like around the office, you're like super quiet. And then in a sales meeting, it's just like snap. You're just on. Yeah. Like, so a lot of founders don't want to do the sales work. But at the end of the day, whether it's a customer, an investor, or a staff member, they're always buying you, you know, so, and they'll see straight through people that are bullshitting and they want to go on your journey with you, and you'd be surprised how many people want to help, but you got to be vulnerable, right? And that's half the challenge is people don't want to be vulnerable because it's a big bad world, and often if you can you trust the wrong people, sometimes I did, you get burnt heavily, but being vulnerable will ultimately get you where you need to be in the long run. So,
and there you have it. Thank you, Brad Moran. That's a wrap.
I didn't get through any of the figs.